Okay, everyone, it's about a 2-minute warning until we go live with X Squared Radio. So just hang in there, fill up the chat room. We'll be there in a minute. Trying to make sure everything is streaming okay. Trying to make right, like everybody is on board. Everybody is streaming okay. 5x5 everywhere. Bring the studio in about a minute and a half. See who's in the chat room. LA is there. First in. Wild Bill. Good to see you out there. Should be a good program tonight. Actually, I don't have a lot of content, but you and I are going to have conversation. That's right. Hit like on your way in. Everything will be wonderful. Laughter Man, good to see you. Do a little surprise. Let's do a reading from, which book shall we pick? Oh, we got about 20 seconds. I can find a book to read from. Let's try Birth Volume 3. Let's see what we can find here. Let's go ahead and bring our studio. Bit of news, but that's okay. Go.
Areas, infrastructure, healthcare. They've got, a climate police force they're going to put out, youth force. But I don't see anything that looks like they want to work together.
Paul on Fox's Sunday Morning Futures. Brad Keselowski has taken the checkered flag at NASCAR's Geico 500. It is Keselowski's sixth win at Talladega and first win of the season. William Byron was second, followed by Michael McDowell. America is listening to Fox News.
Did you know that Neil Armstrong learned to fly?
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
First hour, here we go. And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew. This is where the past meets the future. In here, the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. All right. We have a lot of material to go over tonight, and I will be keying in on the chat room as well. Lots of good friends out there. And the phone lines are open. You can see the phone right up here. Oh, my goodness. We got a generous donation from Freedom on YouTube. Shiba dog in samurai armor waving a banner saying #1. That's what we're talking about. #1 Sunday nights. That's where we are. We're by the way, TalkStreamLive.com is where we ultimately stream out, going through the Truth Frequency Radio Network, and also on iHeart and several other services. But TalkStream Live is the neat one because all of the major podcasters go out there, Blaze and all the other, Blog Talk, and Truth Frequency Radio is in the top 10. Yeah, in the top 10 on TalkStream Live, and X Squared Radio is one of the top programs on this network. So and that's because of you. It's because of you, the listener. We appreciate it so much. All right, I have to let you know that I'm doing server updates this weekend. If you've ever done that, it's not too unlike having a baby. That's the kind of pain you go through bringing these things on. You spend a lot of time downloading all your files and zipping them and getting your restoration files all ready to go. And then once the server is re-imaged, because you have to update your hardware every now and then, once the new server is re-imaged, then you have to restore all those files to the server and get everything running again. Well, it doesn't always go smoothly, especially when you're the chief cook and bottle washer. And I don't do that but once every 10 years, so it takes a little getting used to, and I'm not used to it. BrooksAgnew.com, or BrooksAgnew.blog, is up and running, so everything's fine there. The store's fine. We've updated new book covers, and everything looks fine there. EV Fleet, which is our electric truck company, that is not up, and neither is X Squared Radio. So hopefully all of you are coming into the various services that you get your notices through, because we are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, DLive, and YouTube, as well as on audio on the Truth Frequency Radio Network, where the Truth Freaks hang out, and we are not afraid to let our Truth Freak flag fly. Randy Lou, good to see you out there. Tony M. Space Lincoln Landro, good to see you out there. I think Putin wants Ukrainian soldiers. He'll take a place at a time. Maybe. I don't know. Ukrainian waitresses now. That's something else. Ukrainian soldiers. I don't know about those guys. Pretty tough, though. They've always been tough. All right, let's get right into the news. We talk about nuclear experiments and weapons and things like that we have tested over the decades since the 1945. Only 2 weapons have actually been used in battle, but the rest have all been used for experimental purposes. And when I was doing my postgraduate work at Oak Ridge, which is in Tennessee outside of Knoxville, we were doing what's called neutron activation spectroscopy. This is where we take a sample. In this particular case, it was my class ring. We sucked it over the vacuum tube into the water tank next to a californium source. Californium, we shuttered it open. It bombarded my ring with a bunch of neutrons. And then we sucked the ring over into what's called the quiet chamber. And the quiet chamber was about a 48-inch long sawed-off piece of a 19-inch gun from a World War I battleship. Yeah, it was pretty cool. And it wasn't the coolness of that being a section of a 19-inch gun. The coolness was when the instructor said, well, this is atomically quiet steel. And we all said, what does that mean, atomically quiet? He said, this steel was mined, smelted, and forged before the first nuclear bomb was detonated on Earth. So it has not absorbed any of the fallout, any of the, energetic neutrons floating around our atmosphere for all that time. And that made the chamber very quiet. So you could pick the neutrons coming off the copper and gold atoms in my ring, and thus we were able to determine beyond any shadow of a doubt that the glass ring was 18 karat gold. Yep, we measured it. It was exact. I didn't get cheated by the glass ring company. I thought that was very interesting, but it was very profound, him saying that, and it stuck with me. Well, now, American honey, not Daisy Duke, I mean American honey still contains radioactive fallout from those nuclear tests decades ago. Yep. Traces of radioactive fallout from nuclear tests in the 50s and 60s can still be found in American honey, new research reveals. The radioactive isotope identified, it's the easiest one to spot. It's got a very nice, neat spike, is cesium-137. We used to use cesium-137 to calibrate our radiometric spectroscopy, radioactive spectroscopy, that we would, it was one of the 4 components of my ground probing radar system for discovering oil and gas in the ground and telling drilling companies where the best place was to drill. I'll explain that in a second, but anyway, cesium-137 is one of the isotopes that we look for. And we, in this experiment, they were measuring honey, and I do this all the time. I have a spectroscoper, a spectrometer in my book bag. I have it right here. Hang on one second. No, I know it's out of my other office. It's battery powered, and it is a spectrometer. It will identify the species, and it will record the number of rads, or the number of hits per minute, scintillations per minute, and it will tell me if the place is radioactive or not. But you can also use it to test fish and milk and anything else you buy. And sometimes I take it with me, and it's kind of disconcerting, I guess, in a restaurant when you turn it on. It goes tick 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 tick. It bothers the people there. No such thing as radioactive coffee, though. I haven't ever measured that anyway. So it turns out the amounts measured in the honey emphasize the lingering persistence of environmental contaminants in the nuclear age, even 50 years after intentional bomb tests ended. There was a period in which we tested hundreds of these things, actually about 2,600 of these nuclear weapons, some of them in the atmosphere. And lead researcher Jim Cast, an environmental geochemist at William & Mary University in Williamsburg, Virginia, explained this last year in comments about the research. Here's what he said. What that did was put a blanket of these isotopes into the environment during a very narrow time window. One of those isotopes was cesium-137. By the way, that's the core species that they used at Fukushima, was cesium-137. It was a cesium-137 pellet type reactor. I visited there before it blew up, of course. And this is a byproduct of nuclear fission involving the reaction of uranium and plutonium, which can often be found in trace amounts in food sources due to these nuclear contamination tests in the environment. Some of these traces are much fainter than others, Cast found out, but by pure chance, as it happened, after assigning his students a spring break assignment in the year 2017 to demonstrate to his class how radioactive contaminants from mid-20th century nuclear testing still persisted in the environment today, Cast asked his students to bring back locally sourced foods from wherever they spent the holidays. And as expected, various samples of fruits and nuts and other foods revealed very faint traces of cesium-137 when measured with a gamma detector. But even Cast was not prepared for what happened when he ran the same test with a jar of honey from good old North Carolina. Just a plain old farmer's market. Local, bee honey. I measured it again because I thought something had happened to the container. My detector was bonkers, Cast says. I reproduced the measurement, and it was, again, 100 times hotter than any of these other foods. To find out why honey registered such high levels of cesium-137, Cast and his team, including one of his students, Paul Volante, began testing samples of locally made, raw, pure, and unfiltered honey from markets and beekeepers located across the eastern U.S. Of the 122 honey samples tested, 68 of them showed detectable traces of the radioactive isotope, a legacy of atmospheric nuclear tests conducted by the U.S., the USSR, and other nations during the Cold War era. Now, the majority of detonations occurred above the Marshall Islands and the Pacific Ocean. It's a long way from North Carolina. And Novaya Zemlya, which is the Arctic archipelago, in the northern Russia area, with other tests being conducted in New Mexico, Nevada, and, well, I hate to say it, but also over Utah. According to the researchers, the cumulative effect of over 500 of these test detonations released more ionizing radiation to the atmosphere than any other event in human history. Not that all the blasts were equal in scope. Some were only a few kilotons, and some were pretty massive. We know that the cesium-137 production from the Pacific and Russian sites was more than 400 times the production of the New Mexico and Nevada explosions. A single Russian bomb, which was called the Tsar bomb, we've talked about it on this program before, was more than 50 times more powerful than all the Nevada and New Mexico tests combined. Now, while there's no way of knowing which of these explosions produced the fallout that can still be found in American foods today, we can at least explain how the isotope could disperse so far and wide all the way to North Carolina. What was that, Stephen? Would you like your cesium shaken or stirred, Mr. Bond? Oh, definitely shaken. Never stirred. Many of the air detonations were so powerful that dozens of radioactive fission products were injected into the stratosphere and distributed globally with a residence time of maybe a year or two. It takes a long time for small particles in the stratosphere to finally disperse or fall to Earth, because it doesn't rain in the stratosphere, so it has to fall, by gravity, which is not easy to do. Let's see. And so a lot of this radiation that's striking the ground, that's ending up in the flowers, that's ending up in the pollen, that's ending up on the bees, that's ending up in the honey as it's cumulatively concentrated, is not just from rainfall. Now, while the pollution may be globally ubiquitous, honey's high levels of cesium-137 compared to other foods like milk or corn or wheat show that the fallout appears to concentrate in very unexpected ways. But we can now explain that mystery too. Rainfall might be the predominant force taking 137 out of the atmosphere and depositing it on the Earth's surface. But the honey samples registering the highest amounts of the radioactive isotope weren't produced in regions of the U.S. that received the most precipitation, not particularly rainy areas. Rather, the honeys with the highest levels turned out to come from places in the U.S. where the soil has low levels of potassium, which plants absorb as a nutrient source to fuel a range of metabolic processes. Potassium and cesium actually, they share a number of atomic similarities. And when plants in potassium-poor soil can't get a hold of sufficient levels of their preferred nutrient, guess what they do? They absorb cesium instead, even if it's of the unstable radioactive variety. As a result, the isotope finds its way into plant nectar, and then gets passed to the bees, who in turn concentrate it. They magnify, because it takes a lot of nectar to make a little bitty honey, and that's why the cesium gets concentrated to 100 times that found in other foods. The phenomenon has previously been previously observed in the wake of events such as Chernobyl disaster, but such is the enduring half-life of radioactive particles. It can still be observed even several decades later, and in places located thousands of kilometers away from the site of the original nuclear tests in question. Cesium-137, if I'm remembering right, I think has a 125-year half-life. I could look it up. I can't remember the half-lives of all of the nuclides. If there's a silver lining to this unsettling discovery, it's that none of the cesium-137 levels detected in honey today are even considered to be harmful to humans, falling below the 50 to 100 becquerels per kilogram threshold of radioactivity. I mean, you would have to literally eat jars and jars and jars of the stuff every single day for it to accumulate in your body. However, decades ago, the same toxic fallout would have been fresher and potentially more hazardous to human health, not to mention other organisms too. What we see today is a small fraction of the radiation that was present during the 1960s and 70s. In fact, I have held sand in my hands, my gloved hands, from the Trinity explosion, right? Ground zero. All the isotopes are still there, and we can measure them spectrographically. It makes for great experiments. Note only how many universities have a couple of bags of that sand. Okay, Mark, I get it. It says honey is bee puke, and you're worried about a little hot cesium. Well, yeah, I mean, we are. You know, we used to have nickels. Cesium source is in a little nickel. It's about the size of a nickel and about thickness of a nickel. You don't put them in your pocket, okay? You keep them in a lead box, a little lead box. But we use them for calibration purposes. And I can't remember what the half-life is. I have to look it up, and I don't want to right now. I might do it during the break. Maybe one of the chat members can look it up. Half-life of cesium-137. It's either 12 and a half years or it's 125 years. It's one of those two. In recent years, the ongoing disappearance of bees and other insect pollinators has sparked much concern in scientific circles, and while Cold War nuclear tests aren't often considered a primary driver of this problem, the bee die-off, we can't afford to ignore that they too could be a contributor, okay? Given that pollinating insects provide vital services to the world's ecosystem and are essential in maintaining global food security, obviously, if the bees all die off, we're going to have to find another way to pollinate our plants, pollinate our crops. I remember when I was in the service, I used to watch the migrants come in, the migrant farm workers. And by migrant, I mean they would travel with the weather. As crops ripened, they would travel with the crops, and they picked everything. We had potato machines, but you still had to have a human, going over that belt and throwing out the good potatoes and keeping the good ones. Sugar beets, all kinds of hand-picked stuff like cabbage and cucumbers and tomatoes, and now they have machines to do a lot of that, but in those days we didn't. And one of the crew that would show up earlier in the year, in the very spring when things would begin to flower, were the beekeepers. They would show up with these tractor-trailer rigs, and they would open up their hives, and the bees would fly out over and pollinate all the flowers, and then they'd gather them all back up and go to the next field. And so they had no telling what kind of honey they had, but the point is that all the plants did well because they were germinated. Now we have genetically modified foods and hybrids that don't have to have any of that. They don't flower at all. Let's see. All this this stuff can be found in the report called Nature Communications. It's pretty cool stuff. I like reading stories like this. I'm disconcerted that radioactivity was so indiscriminately spread around the world for experimentation's sake. At some point, somebody had to say during the program, do you think it's a good idea we blow off another one of these things? I don't know. I mean, where can you move? Where can you go? There weren't ever any nuclear blasts in North Carolina, and yet here it is. Here it is in our honey. It's in my honey bear right there on my counter. I squeeze it in my coffee or on my English muffin, and now I have to worry about this. Yeah, okay, very good. It's a half-life for cesium. Stoker in the chat room says it's 30.17 years. I was thinking, 12 and a half, 125, somewhere in there. So 30.7 years means that the neutrons are coming off of cesium at a fairly steady rate, and that's why they cause alpha particle damage. So if you walk around with a cesium nickel in your pocket, you're probably going to end up sterile because your testicles and maybe even your pelvis is going to absorb some of those neutrons, and you're not going to be in good shape. Oh, don't break my heart, Mark. He says the plastic bear honey is mostly high fructose corn syrup. No. Mine says 100%. 100% clove honey. Yeah, I only get that stuff. Eat honey, become Godzilla. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Very good, Mailer David. I like it. By the way, have you seen Godzilla versus King Kong? Yes? No? You know, there's a lot of Hollow Earth stuff in there. You remember Godzilla, the last Godzilla movie, you know, where I think it's Godzilla 3 or whatever. I'm mentioned in the movie by name. I really am. It's I guess they had a character that played me, and he ended up on the editing room floor. But they were kind of chasing Godzilla, and Godzilla disappeared off the radar screen. And the head doctor looks at the other scientist and says, Dr. Brooks was right. The Earth is hollow. And there it is right there in the movie. And so I contacted the director, and he said, yes, in fact, it was Dr. Brooks. That's me. And I'm the Hollow Earth guy. So it ended up in there. Now, in King Kong versus Godzilla, there's a lot of talk about Hollow Earth, but there's no Dr. Brooks. Sorry to say. They didn't ask me to play, and they didn't have a character play me. But it was interesting. And yes, I did try to get my IMDb updated with that, and they said, no, not going to work this time. That's okay. It was worth a try. But it's a good movie. If you haven't seen Godzilla versus King Kong. I mean, when I grew up, you know, King Kong climbed the Empire State Building, right? But like Godzilla was the Empire State Building. That's like, but in the movie they're in the same weight class. And of course, one's more agile than the other, and the other has better weapons. But well, I'm not going to give you any spoilers. Stephen, I never actually trusted Godzilla. Really? Godzilla was, I mean, as long as you were shooting like rockets at him, he would get pissed and just make that sound that he makes and wipe everybody out. But when the other bad, like Mothra, showed up, or, you know, one of the other Japanese monsters, then Godzilla would put up his dukes and punch him out, you know, above some Japanese city that they were stomping like Legos beneath their feet. It was all good, right? It was all good. Godzilla was a good story. Or as, what is it? Was it Matthew Broderick? Was that? Anyway, he said in that movie it was Godzilla. It's all right. It was a fun movie. All of them are fun. Hey, we'll take a quick break with TFR. Hang on a second. Let me send them to break. All right, we'll send them to break. Let me get a sip of my water while I do that. Yeah. Oh, the Mothra twins. My childhood crushes. I'm so sure. Space Lincoln Landrew. So good, so good. What was the one with all the dragon heads? That was pretty cool too. It wasn't Hydra. It didn't have like a name like that. It had another name. Mothra is the one I remember. And thanks, Brandy. She says, I look calm, rested, and healthy tonight after the stressful work on the computer. That's awesome. Well, it isn't that kind of work. As it turns out, my contract with the Fortune 800 company that I was working with in March came to an end on March 15th. I've done a couple of little gigs since then. But I'm not actually due to start back full-time consulting until tomorrow morning. So I've had some time off. I got to play guitar, got to ride my motorcycle. I'm almost done with chapter 7 of the new book, and it is coming together quite nicely. So I have had some time off, no 70-hour weeks for about 3 weeks, and I guess that's why I look so good. I look so healthy. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the new American Civil War. And I give updates on this from time to time, but I'm trying to lean away from adding resonant energy to violence, because I think we can solve this issue that we're facing without violence. And I still have my Trump 2020 sign up in my garage, in my man cave. And there are a lot of people out there that still believe that Trump is president. Many, many, many more people that believe that the election did not go with the normal integrity of an American election this last time. And so there are a lot of Americans that feel that 2020 needs to be recovered. Okay? And that's what's been going on this weekend in Arizona. Now, you have to understand a lot of lawsuits were filed. Nonprofits stepped in. They actually won their lawsuits. They were able to present enough evidence to get lawsuits filed, and they have asked for a recount. But this is no ordinary recount. As it turns out, the people in Arizona had a little bit on the ball when they printed their ballots. It appears as though in Arizona, all the authentic ballots had a watermark that you can only see with ultraviolet light. Now, why these weren't counted on election night is beyond me, but evidently there were things that the Democrats were doing at the time that were a little like calling up Ballots R Us. I know you know who Ballots R Us is. Hang on, we'll bring TFR back in.
7 p.m. to 10 p.m.
No hate, no hype, no fear. We are TFR, your protection from deception.
So as I was saying, the recount has begun in Arizona, and lots of preparatory work has been done. Security had to be set up. A secure area had to be set up. The ballots had to be delivered and had to have custody, a chain of custody that was verifiable. And what they're doing is they're using special equipment and they're scanning these ballots, not just looking for signatures, but they're also looking for legit paper. As it turns out, the military is aware of printing presses in China that were manufacturing pre-voted ballots. Yeah, pre-voted ballots. I mean, they were not just printing blank ballots. They were printing ballots that were pre-voted and signed. Now, how did they get the signatures? How did they get the names? Well, as you know, in 2018, the Chinese cyber hackers, CCP cyber hackers, broke into a couple of databases, and one was the Equifax. Equifax is one of the credit bureaus, and they have all the goods on you. They know where you shop. They know what credit cards you have. They know what other debts you have. They know where you work. They know how long you've worked there. They know every time you write a bad check. They have your ID. They have your signature. They have your birthday. They have everything that they need, and the Chinese have it too. So they simply welded the two together, merged the two files together, so they could produce a pre-voted ballot with your name and your signature on it, and then they sent them to the various precincts, to warehouses. And what happened was, as I predicted in April of 2020, what happened was I predicted 5 to 6 states would stop their count in the middle of the night. They would roll up the rear dock doors, and they would accept ballots from Ballots R Us to swing the vote. They couldn't have electronic machines simply flip the votes, because then they have no paper ballots to back it up. They could do a few, but then they could call that a computer glitch or whatever. But they had to have just enough, not a landslide, just enough, 10, 12, 20, 30,000 votes, just enough to swing the state toward Joe Biden. And we all know, we've been watching elections since we've been the United States of America. And unless you win Florida and Ohio and Iowa, you're not winning the presidency. If you lose Iowa, you lose Ohio, and you lose Florida, you're not winning. It just doesn't happen. And yet, Joe Biden lost Iowa, he lost Ohio, and he lost Florida, and he still won. And what it was is these 5 or 6 states had contracted with a company that was kind of like United We Stand. It was a nonprofit that actually contracted with 16 states. Now, not all 16 states did this because it just wasn't practical to do. But 5 states did. And the contract was that they would withhold their vote tallies until the national popular vote was known. And once the national popular vote was known, the state, Secretary of State and governor had committed to pledging their delegates to the popular vote. They were not going to allow their state to vote different than the popular vote. They were trying to undo the Electoral College. Well, it didn't work out exactly the way they wanted to, but they did manage to get Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona to do this late night Ballots R Us run. The unfortunate thing about Arizona is, and if you'll recall, on January 6th, Arizona was on the floor of the House debating whether or not to have the state legislature certify its electors instead of the ones that were certified under the governor and the Secretary of State. The legislature was aware of enough fraud to make up the difference of the 10,000 votes that Joe Biden ostensibly won, even though the governor won by 384,000 votes. A Republican president loses by 10,000 votes. It didn't make sense to them. So they were going to seat their own electors, which is totally constitutional. And of course, just as that was happening, Nancy Pelosi left the podium, laid down the mallet and the gavel, not the mallet, and left the podium, and the Antifa and BLM people broke in and disrupted everything, pissed everybody off. They were able to run the narrative, and the debate was over. So there wasn't anything Pence could do. Pence never got a chance to make a decision. They took it away from him. So now here we are, 100 days later, and now we're going through the ballots with the ultraviolet light to determine which ballots came from China and which ballots came from the authorized contracted printer in Arizona, or wherever it is in the United States that Arizona had contracted those ballots that were mailed out to be printed. Some of the ballots, as you know, arrived back at the counting precinct, never folded. Well, sorry, but you don't mail out ballots unfolded. They're trifolded. And they're sent out. So when these ballots come back, they're taken out of the envelope where they can lay flat and go through the machine. But the folds are still there. So you have these ballots, hundreds of thousands of them that come back with no fold in them. It's highly suspicious. But when they come back with no fold and no watermark, that's a sure sign that there's been a switch or at least stuffing going on. So we do have a caller in New York sitting on the line. I've laid it out well enough. I want to talk about the new American Civil War. And I always get brilliant stuff out of New York. So let's go ahead and bring our guest on. Welcome to the program. What's on your mind, sir?
Now, what were you focusing on again? Wait before you picked up.
What
were you mentioning?
We're talking about the new American Civil War, and we're specifically talking about the recount that's going on in Arizona.
Okay. Well, for one, Trump did say that Arizona would be the first one to flip, and he also stated that New York would wind up flipping over in his favor as well. Now, I don't think that he meant necessarily voting-wise, as in like it would be officially voted for, but that New York would wind up turning over for him, which I think he was right about that. And then on top of that, when it comes to the Arizona, it's looking like Arizona might be the first one to actually flip over when it comes to the election fraud and all that. And if Arizona does, isn't all the rest going to go with it too, all the other fraud stuff?
Well, I don't know how many other states had watermarks on their ballots, but ostensibly they have set the equipment up. It's been noticed by camera, and lots of people are watching those cameras online right now. They are noticing that they are backlighting the ballots with ultraviolet light. So they're looking for the watermark. And if they don't find it on the ballot, that ballot's not going to be counted. They're going to end up tossing out 200,000 or 300,000.
When it comes to the cameras, though, I remember hearing a video that supposedly last Friday or something, the White House got raided. And there's talk of how the cameras in Washington, D.C. are being altered, the live feed ones for the public and all that.
Really?
So there's a good chance that the ones that they're watching, yeah. So that's what I've seen I go to BitChute, so that's why I go to look up videos and stuff, and one of the videos was this, and it was talking about the White House being raided. And one of the things I mentioned was the camera. So if they're doing that because did you know that they can do that with the live camera feed?
You mean they can substitute the live?
Like anything they want? So like kind of like a green screen almost. Like they have a green screen with the camera or the video feed.
So they substitute it
so
from
they can
another
put whatever
source.
They want in live feed.
Wow. Well,
yeah. That was Alex Jones mentioning that back 2017 or whatever. He was showing how they could do that. But
what they've done is they've divided they've divided the Arizona counting section up into colors. And then the people that work in those colored sections, they have the same colored T-shirt on. So they can't just walk around to different tables. So it's very difficult to feed in a fake feed when you have everybody wearing purple shirts or everyone wearing yellow shirts.
And then I'm also guessing other people should be walking around with their own cameras as well. You know what I mean? Which I'm hoping that, they're not going to, at this point in time, it should be allowed for everyone to have their own cameras. You know what I mean?
Well, they've actually...
But even then, they might have the technology to still be able to...
They've actually ejected the press.
I mean, I know...
Because they don't want the press reporting on their microphone and intimidating the people who are counting.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fair. I understand the press not being there because obviously they're not trustworthy. When it comes to this whole case with the cop, with the whole George Floyd, would you consider this to be the turnaround point for the law? I mean, I know cops are leaving left and right, and that a lot of stuff's going down. But at this point in time, they now kind of like, if they charge that dude with murder for George Floyd, then BLM and Antifa and all that, especially Antifa, because they didn't even have a legitimate reason as to why they were, rioting. They were just rioting against Trump. So when it comes to BLM and all that, though, doesn't this kind of mean like they're all going to wind up being arrested soon, or whatnot? Something along those lines.
I'm not sure. When I
if
look
they're going
at
to sit there and charge this cop,
when I look at the tape of what Chauvin did,
what?
Having his knee on a guy for 9 minutes, there's just no excuse for that. I don't care how violent the guy is. He was outnumbered. They could have got him in the car without standing on him for 9 minutes. I think what Chauvin did was out of line, and
yep.
I don't care if he swings myself, but I got tired of looking at police brutality years ago, and every time I go to YouTube, I could watch until I run out of tears. There's so much police brutality out there.
Yeah, there is. And that's the thing. See, with this personality stuff, like, that's why it's key. Like, a lot of people naturally are, not a lot, but there's the few people that gravitate towards positions like cops and judges and all that because of the power, obviously. And those types of people are the ones that you don't want them to be in positions of power. You want others to be in there that aren't going to abuse it. So this personality stuff's a good indicator and could tell a lot of who would abuse their power.
Well, have you ever watched the recruiting films? Have you ever watched the recruiting films? You watch the recruiting films for sheriff. It's a little like, Andy of Mayberry. You're guarding a courthouse. You're serving warrants, that kind of stuff. Police, that's a different story. That's when you get the what you gonna do, bad boy, bad. It's all goose stepping, baton swinging, earmuff gun shooting. It is punk. I've done it. I've gone and looked at the recruiting films, different cities, and it's crazy. Not only that, but they prefer to hire veterans who've either come out of the battlefield or come out of military police. I, for one, would never hire a policeman, or hire a person for a policeman who has killed another human being already. I wouldn't do it.
Now, why would you do that? Just to get your take, because can you understand the reasons why it would be a decent idea? Because they've been through battle, so they're more equipped in a sense of they won't necessarily lose sight of or focus of their objective or goal, like necessarily turn.
Well, the ones that I've
and all
met,
that and whatever.
The ones that I've met go right to the maximum level
right.
of violence as quickly as possible. They don't try to talk. They don't try to de-escalate. They don't try to reason with people. They don't try to stay quiet. They try to get right in the person's face and make them react so that they can take action against them. And that's just not police work as far as I'm concerned.
Now, here's the thing. Now, my question would be, those people that do that, is it learned behavior or is it a certain, like, cognitive function or whatever that they're using? Is it, like, are they, is it learned or is it just more of an actual thing that they do naturally?
Well, I'm a veteran myself.
That's why this personality stuff isn't.
I'm a veteran myself, but a veteran of the Air Force. However, I can tell you what they do in basic training is they break you. They break your personality, and they build you a new one. And if you ever go in the field, like the Afghanistan or Iraq or any war zone, Somalia, they take that personality and ratchet it up as high as it'll go. And they don't actually debrief you when it's done. When they take your gun away and your rank away, they don't send you to 90 days of, hey, you're a human being again class. You're dumped right back into society and asked to fit in. And the only place you can really fit in with those kind of skill sets is in law enforcement.
And even then, what do you call it? When it comes to the whole breakdown, I'm really curious as to what they've done and all that as to breaking people down and how that's all wound up being. Because it's a good chance that when they break someone down, the person just simply goes into their unconscious state of mind or their superego or possibly subconscious, but more likely the unconscious or superego state of mind.
It's
And,
true. It's
that's
true,
what
but
I'm thinking.
most of the police that I know, city cops that I know, I see them at the gym, I see them at the shooting range. They don't have an ounce of fat on them. They're taking performance-enhancing drugs. They shave their heads. They wear black glasses. They wear black tight uniforms. And you're right. It is an air of fear that they try to walk with. And I just, when I was growing up, police were there to protect and to serve the community. They were designed to protect the community against people that would do the community harm. That's not what they are anymore. I don't care if I never speak to another policeman again as long as I live. I don't need one. I can take care of my own primary care.
Well, see, here's the thing, though. When it comes to all that, what happened was, the cops got infiltrated by, obviously corruption, wherever it was, wherever it's mobs, gangs, MS-13 and all that, that's all that's happened. I mean, so we just need to clean all that up. I mean, that's really all that's happened is that people have obviously, there was already an air of corruption, but it's gotten wider, more spread. People used to not be that way, but, how they do it is through slowly, whoever's going to be in a position of power or in a position of something that's, strategic value, they're going to use that. And if they can't get to that, then they'll use, for instance, they'll try to get the cop. If they can't get the cop, they may go for the wife. If they can't get the wife, they may go for the child. If they can't get the child, they go for the child's friend. You see what I mean? They'll find something to get a person or whatever to get to, and then from there, they'll use that to get to the other person. But they'll do it in a very subtle way, like how they destroyed society. Like, they didn't come on with Christians and be like, oh, here's Satanism and all that. They slowly brought it in through, music
it's
and all
true,
that, which first they started with, the Beatles and everything.
It's true that
You know
which
what I mean?
which we once abhor, we soon tolerate, then embrace. So I'm with you. It's like, boiling a frog. I get all that. But I want to.
Now, here's one thing I was thinking. Just real quick on the whole, the whole cycle that they have, the big cycle, like the 2,000 years of darkness and then light. You know what I mean? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
It was like the Mayans were talking about with the calendar.
Right. Like the golden age, the age of Aquarius is about to start.
I'm thinking what it is what happens is, and you know how they always talk about how humanity forgets. We have amnesia. Where
we forget our own history
or whatever. What happened?
We forget our own history.
Yeah, and so I think what happens is we wind up realize what happens is we realize corruption because corruption becomes so blatant, and then we wind up standing up against it, and then that's when the golden society comes, where the truth's out there, and we know how to defend ourselves, and we know what's going on, and we make the world a better place. And then what happens is slowly corruption winds up coming back again. Like I said, it took them decades to get the Christian faith destroyed or whatever, but thousands of years it takes for evil to come in. So I'm thinking that that's the cycle, and it's that, we'll see the corruption
I talk about
maybe
it in
the
my
next
book.
couple of years.
I talk about it in my book, Remembering the Future. I call it the peace, mercy, justice, war cycle. We have, let's say we start with peace, and then what happens is people take advantage of that, and so we begin asking for justice through rule of law. And when we don't get that, it turns into war. And then when war is over, we ask for mercy again. So it's just a cycle we go through over and over and over again. We repeat it incessantly. And what could stop it all is if we had honor in law enforcement. If we had honor in law enforcement, and we didn't have superior beings that could walk through the earth and murder and rape and steal and launder and lie with impunity. Nothing happens to them. They get richer and richer and more powerful. If we didn't have that, we would have no need for war.
That is true. Yeah, I didn't realize that your book mentioned all that, so I probably should wind up reading it at some point.
Well, yes, you should read it.
Yeah.
I even have a painting that goes with it. It's 4 hearts, and they're in a square with the point of the heart facing each other, so you can see a peace, justice, war, and mercy. Around and around and around we go. And, you can be overly merciful and then just let evil take over. Or you can have peace without law enforcement. But what happens is people end up pickpocketing it first, and then they break and enter, and then they rape, and then they do violence to get what they want, carjacking and whatever. And if the people don't get justice, eventually the people will ask for war. That's what happens.
And do you know also of the smaller cycle of the what do you call it? The generational cycle of the 4 types that you got there? The seasonal, what is it called?
Well,
it's supposed to be. You've got one generation that's brought up in like chaotic war and a crisis, and they wind up. The one that's brought up in that chaotic crisis is the silent generation, and they produce the what is it? Like the heroic generation was the World War II generation, the generation that went to war and all that. They consider that the heroic, and then after that is like the boomer one's supposed to be. I think it's supposed to replicate the. It's supposed to be like the 4 seasons. So the one season's supposed to be winter, which is like the war and everything and cold crisis, and like what we're in right now, how everything's the price of food and that's gone high, and we're got sickness and everything, and everything's just going crazy because we had people that were in charge that had the easy life because, right after World War II and that, everything was calmed down, and everything was plentiful and in America and all that. And so people wind up getting used to the easy life, so it wind up creating weak men. So good societies create weak men, I think they say, and weak societies create strong men. Because, when you're in a communistic weak society, you got to stand up and you got to be real strong, in order to overcome that.
I always thought
Whereas
men of integrity,
like America,
I always thought men of integrity, the best place to get them is from boys of integrity. So if you don't raise your young people correctly, like 20 years of Marxist education systems, and look what we have. We have young people that are standing in line to get a vaccine that's going to genetically alter their offspring.
Yeah, I've been talking to people online, and there's been people that said that they've gotten the vaccine, and one of them even said that after they got it, they started having like an allergic reaction to stuff or whatever, and they had to go get a steroid injection and everything. So they don't know if it's from the vaccine, but they got the vaccine. Then like a couple weeks later, supposedly they need a steroid injection.
Well, the numbers are in 5 million people that have had the first shot have refused to take the second one.
5 million.
5 million.
And that's a good percentage.
That's pretty good. I mean, you got about
how many people have actually taken it?
140 million, I think, in the United States have actually taken it. Now, I just got to be logical about this. Let's just suppose that all the testing hasn't been done. We haven't seen all of the effects on all kinds of people of this vaccine. And let's just say we start seeing effects in a year. And let's say the effects are something simple like developing Lewy cells in the brain, which are precursors to dementia. Let's say we have clotting or we have other issues. By the way, these issues can be passed on to descendants, to children, because in humans, as opposed to mice, about 15% of our what's called structural DNA, the actual lattice of the DNA, is inherited by the next generation. And this is exactly where messenger RNA attaches to human DNA. Hey, we're going to take a quick break.
When it comes to this whole...
Hang on a second here. I've got to send TFR to a break for 3 minutes. And we'll talk for a little bit, and then when we come back, I want to get back into my subject for the evening. But so what were you saying about the vaccine?
Yeah, the vaccine, what was it? For one, supposedly the vaccine is able to, if you take the vaccine, you can transfer it through sex to your partner or whatever. That's supposedly something. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I heard about that.
You can shed it.
And then on top of that, also, I'm curious as to the people that are getting adverse effects. This is supposed to be a DNA-changing vaccine, but they had to start, or they have a particular structure in mind. And so maybe certain people, maybe they started with, because you know how with vaccines and everything, they have to start with like some type of cellular structure.
Yeah.
Right? Don't they usually have to? Or because I'm not 100% on vaccines and everything. I haven't studied it that much, but if I'm not mistaken, that's what I got, was that they have to start from some type of cellular structure. So whatever the cellular structure they started with, it might be the main reason why people are having such an adverse effect and reaction. So, like, if let's say they started with somebody that was from the Caucasian, right, or some cellular structure that was more Caucasian-based or something, then maybe the people that are having the most adverse reactions would be maybe Spanish or African-American. So it's just, I'm curious as to the reactions and who's actually getting that.
Yeah, everybody is.
Over the DNA structure.
Laughter Man in the chat room on DLive is saying, problem is delayed vaccine reactions will be plausibly denied. They won't be attributed to mRNA instructions. And he's exactly right. If the adverse effects happen 6 months or a year from now, they're going to be blamed on a new variant.
I'm not worried about that because, like my generation, we're gonna have to like right there when he says, "Oh, well, it could be denied." The reality is that's not going to be. Like my generation and that we're not. The very future, the very soon, it's no more of this. Well, technically, it's not true. You know what I mean? Like this whole game charade of we know it's true, but we're not gonna say anything is gone. It's right there. It's going to be gone. So when he says that, I understand what he means, like you do and everyone else. Well, they just won't admit that it's real. Well, sorry, buddy, it's real. Like, we don't have to have your permission. Like, why do we need their permission to admit that it's real? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do.
So that's like, it's over for these people. You know what I mean? Like, they don't stand a chance. They know it's over. It's done.
I would rather do.
I'd
rather do the therapeutics.
I've been studying this stuff for over 12 years.
I'd rather do the therapeutics. What? I would rather not have the vaccine. I'll wait a year and see what it does to 140 million people. That's a pretty good experiment. I hate to lose 140 million people. Yeah. That would really be a bummer. But I'll wait. I'll wait a year and see what it does.
Yeah. Well, but it's just, like, it's that whole mentality like that guy had, which is completely understandable because he's lived that life, you know what I mean? So, like, I can understand people that have it or whatever. But
hang on a second, I got to bring TFR back in.
It's no longer. Okay. Well, all right.
All right, my friend.
TFR. Truth Frequency
Radio. All right,
Radio.
Have a good night.
Here we go, hour 2. right, we're going to continue with our subject, the new American Civil War. You know, the president and the vice president, the current ones we have right now, are who they are because 6 Republican-controlled states forwarded questionable electoral votes, and Vice President Mike Pence missed a historic opportunity to challenge those votes. He could have. He had the authority to do it. No, there was no historical record of any vice president doing it, but he had the authority. Now, the current president and vice president are trapped. They are. They're trapped in foggy and abstract ideological slogans rather than providing executive leadership. The leadership obviously is coming from somewhere else. It's coming from higher up. It's coming from a person or organization that's writing speeches, that's writing executive orders, that has been planning this for a long, long time. In fact, I think maybe this was the original plan that was supposed to go in place when Hillary Clinton would have been elected in 2016. They've had it all sitting there on the shelf ready to go. These vague generalities and virtue signaling and circling back and all this crap, they aren't replacements for executive leadership. And who are the true executive leaders of the 2 Americas? Oh yeah, there's 2 Americas. Florida and Texas and states like them on one side, and California and New York and states like them on the other side. Their governors essentially dominate the bully pulpit formerly occupied by a sitting president. Why? Because Virtual Joe is AWOL. He doesn't have leadership. No, he's not tweeting. No, he's not, making speeches from the bully pulpit. He's nowhere to be found. Many of the rest of the American states have aligned with one side or the other, and this is the grand division that I spoke about in the Birth Trilogy. The American political conversation has become one of Dr. Seuss's Sneetches with stars on steroids, as Americans are now beginning to group, they're beginning to gather, they're beginning to assemble on different sides of the street, and they're marching separately according to their own ideas and their own, I don't want to call them ideologies because I don't think the left actually has an ideology. I think they have a method to their madness, but their madness is universal. And if you look at them, it doesn't matter what color they are, it doesn't matter what state they're in, it doesn't matter what camera is in their face or what microphone is before them, or even if they know they're being recorded or not. There is a rage about them. The way that they scream, the way their eyes bug out, the way that they ball up their fists, and even, normal housewives, they're ready to kill. They're ready to fight. And over stupid stuff like not wearing a mask or white privilege, silly stuff. But the rage is a symptom. It is this disease. It's how it's affected them. The other ideology are people that want to be free. They're people that enjoy smiling. They're people that enjoy going to work. They enjoy getting off work. They enjoy going out to eat together and go to bars and go to Little League games and cheerleading competitions. They're just ordinary parents and ordinary Americans that enjoy life. 1 minute, 1 moment, 1 day, 1 weekend, 1 paycheck, 1 family vacation at a time. These 2 Americas are more than just blue and red, okay? It is more than that. And the separation is the manifest digital apartheid, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. It's being applied by the blue side to the red side, or from the Marxist side to the patriot side. Even to say the word patriot, even to say the word sovereign or American or, constitution, anything like that, is going to bring the wrath of this other America down on you. And this digital apartheid it's pervasive. It's everywhere. It's in every state. It's in every economic level. And it is driven by this new, vicious, lockstep social justice mantra that has taken over the automatons who lead U.S. social media, okay? The global media empire, which is led by 6 rich white guys, and the tech giants, basically Jack and Zuckerberg and the heads of Google. So that encompasses YouTube as well. And we've all suffered from it. We're suffering from it as we speak. We're experiencing an unprecedented shakedown by groups such as Black Lives Matter, which, by the way, isn't even a registered nonprofit. The IRS doesn't even know who they are. And yet they have raised over $2 billion for the Democrats. They haven't raised a dime for America or for inner city or to put anybody through college or to rebuild a store that's been looted or burned. Not a dime for that. But Patrice Colliers, who's one of the founders of BLM, she has bought for herself 4 multi-million-dollar houses. And let's not forget Antifa. 52,000 paid activists who work for an organization called the OFA, the Organizing for Action. It was founded in 2013 by Barack Hussein Obama, while he was president, by the way. Now, of course, a natural conflict of interest, and so he kind of spaced away a little bit and was run by other people. But as soon as he got out of office, he couldn't wait to get on TV and brag about how it was fully funded and how they had 30,000 full-time activists working across the country to disrupt America. And that's when he got out of office. After that, it increased to 52,000. And they're fired up and they're trained with this relentless bullhorn of post-World War I propaganda. There are now 2 business systems in America. There's a blue one and there's a red one. Many of the businesses that lead major market sectors have now revealed themselves to be de facto thought police to enforce this new social justice, this new digital apartheid. MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell is in the pillow business, waking people up. I mean, that's a little bit ironic, but it is. Then you have the individuals that are all about this wokeism. We're also finding out there are 2 financial systems in America. There are those with capital, now act as the gatekeepers of who receives capital and who is excluded. That's the way they've always been. They don't like the middle class. They don't want the middle class playing in their sandbox. That's what fascism does. Fascism uses government to keep competitors away from them. They take officers of their own corporation and put them inside the agency government, whether it's the Department of Transportation or Education or Energy or Food and Drug, it doesn't matter. They put their officers inside that government organization to write regulations to keep their competitors away, keep them out of business, keep them from getting certified, keep them from getting funded. It's a far cry from the intent of their founder, who wanted to make sure everybody had access. The modern bank staff has now become an appendage of the virtue signaling synchronized chorus. The last time I went to a bank was in March of 2020. I went to the bank to get a document notarized. I've been going to that same bank for 25 years. And yet I was stopped in the parking lot by a thug with a mask who said I had to have an appointment to get inside the bank. They weren't seeing anybody unless they had an appointment. I said, well, fine. I took out my phone. I said, let's make an appointment right now. He said, oh, no, we couldn't possibly do that. You see, we're completely booked for the rest of the month. I said, what are you saying? Are you saying this bank is closed? Oh, no, we're not closed, but we're only seeing one person at a time in the bank, and when their business is done and they come out, the next appointment can come in. And you're booked up for a month. Yes, oh yes, we're booked up for a solid month. I ended up going to the UPS store to get my documents notarized. That's what we're facing. And Saturday and I have another story on this, we're seeing the bank holidays become more serious. Now they're not just stopping you in the parking lot, they're stopping you online as well. Oh yeah. And there are 2 media systems in America. The Hollywood award shows are now a Roman circus of body oil and foam, self-loathing lecturing and virtuous signaling. Few are watching these award shows, and nobody cares. Nobody cares that people are watching or not. Nobody cares what the ratings are. They don't care. It's not for you. It's for them. It's curious from an agnostic business perspective how CNN even survives at this point in time. They don't have any sponsors. Nobody watches them. They have the same number of viewers that I do. Yeah, the same number of viewers I do. And I'm not making the money they're making. Somehow the citizen's pocketbook is being fleeced by corporations and advertisers who recycle ad revenue through woke media to keep them alive when it's patently obvious the viewership has imploded. But that's the beauty of the new era of crony capitalism. You want to see it at its best? Do you know what the immigrant children are getting when they arrive at the border and they're welcomed by the Democrat Party? They get a free copy of Kamala Harris's book, her children's book. Now, who do you think bought that book? Well, the government bought it, of course. Thousands and thousands and thousands of copies. Where do you think that money goes? Oh, it goes into Kamala Harris's fund. Just like Bernie Sanders gets a ghostwriter to write a book, put his name on it. Some organization, some company buys 100,000 copies of it. Boom. Bernie Sanders is a millionaire. Doesn't even know how to answer a question out of the book. Doesn't even really know who wrote it. This is the way it's done. This is the crony capitalism. This is the money laundering scheme that goes on in Washington. The citizens of our nation have conspicuously or unconsciously chosen sides. If you're angry at yourself for not being woke enough and have righteous virtue signal signs in your yard lauding BLM or Antifa, you're likely on the blue side. If the drivel of virtue signaling makes no sense to you, you're probably on the red side. The biggest manifestations of this rapid reset of America into blue and red camps is the incredible internal movement of Americans. And I'm not talking about the one you do in the bathroom by yourself. Americans are moving to Texas. They're leaving California. And it's not in small numbers. Do you know they'll actually pay me to drive a U-Haul from Texas back to California? If I wanted to move to California, I wanted to haul something to California, I could do it for almost free, just the gas. California has seen its first decline in population in a century, since the year 1900. Yeah, Americans are on the move, and guess what? It's not to blue, it's to red. It's with Texas and Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, because these people are refugees. They're refugees from New York and California. They're refugees from Massachusetts and Minnesota. They're refugees from Virginia. My dreams of a large, inexpensive home in Florida have evaporated with the rise in home prices by my target localities. Why? Because all those rich people in Massachusetts and New York and California and Detroit and Michigan, they're selling their homes that they've owned for 20 years because they can't take it anymore. And they're bringing their equity to the South. And they're buying homes that are absolutely blowing their minds with space and land and views and low taxes. I would suggest the numbers are even greater than what I'm talking about and what are being reported on the news. This type of socioeconomic data traditionally lags quite a ways in reporting to the time it takes to collect, aggregate, sort, and analyze it. You listen to this program because I'm slightly ahead of what the other pundits are. I'm better at looking at the data. I'm better at crunching it, better at finding trends and patterns in it. Last year, I found it difficult to find data on the population flows. No one was printing it. No one was telling the story. I was seeing it. I was reporting it, but nobody was making numbers yet. And yet at the same time, anecdotal data pointed to a strong movement that wasn't yet reflected. Nobody could see it yet. You have to look for different economic indicators, okay? And you could see it. When houses in North Carolina, and we have not really had a baby boom here in North Carolina, not really. We have exploded. Homes used to stay on the market for 3 months, 4 months, sometimes 2 months if they were a really hot neighborhood. Now you're lucky to see a home stay on the market 6 to 8 hours. Yeah, 6 to 8 hours. And it's a seller's market. You know what that means? That means sellers don't pay closing costs anymore. Nope. That means sellers don't have to take second mortgages back to sell their houses. Nope. The sellers get their asking price, whatever it is. The appraisers can't even keep up with it. So where are we headed? Where are we headed with this new American Civil War? Despite the attempts of the current administration to transform American society with these open borders, and it's insanity, absolute insanity. I see unanticipated consequences of the blue strategy that will work in the red state's favor. Now, we're not really seeing the benefits of it really yet, but we will soon. Big government's plans always screw up, and they always deliver unintended consequences. The trend lines, all of them are bad for the blue states. Nobody's going to work. Median wages are down. Savings are down. Home ownership is down. Homelessness is up. Every indicator you want to look at is bad for blue states. The elites, they don't care. They can socially engineer all they want. Their blue states are collapsing because of the brilliant plans of the leaders of the four corners of deceit in modern America. And what are they? The four pillars of the syndicate. Big tech, the global media empire, big finance, the banks, and the people that control the access to capital. The political arm, which is the Democrat Party, which controls everything, the White House, the Congress, the Senate, everything. And let's not forget we could call it academia if you want to, but the people that control information. Okay, people that control the flow of information. And we shouldn't forget the military arm, the CCP, and I would say the men in black. And I'm not talking about the men in black with a suit and tie. I'm talking about what we used to call the men in blue. We used to call the men in blue our police. Most police are revenuers now. Most police work for governors and work for mayors, and they're hired thugs, and all they do is collect money off of us. They hide on our highways, they stalk us, they spy on us, they beat us, They fine us. It's just a tax. It's a tax for being around, just being around. What do you want to do? You want to blend in. You want to wear your mask. You want to drive the speed limit. You don't want to have a red car. You don't want to have a short skirt. You don't want to drink too much. You don't want to smoke too much. You want to just blend in. You want to be part of the school of fish in your society. So the police never get their hands on you. You never make a mistake that stands out too much. Everybody breaks the law from time to time. You can't help it. There are too many of them. But you can't stand out. Can't stand out. You got to blend in. That's the closest thing you and I come to in our neighborhoods to the military. But there's more than that. By fortifying Washington, D.C. in a way that is eerily reminiscent of the American Civil War, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, by the way, a Democrat from California, has rendered fortified our capital of diminished relevance. Austin, Tallahassee, and more importantly, Mar-a-Lago are now the centers of gravity for America. They really are. This is where decisions are being made. The big tech can manipulate search results all they want. They are now living in their self-made ministry of truth and will go the way of MySpace and Sears and YouTube. Oh, I guess YouTube's still out there, but not for long, because the viewers are going somewhere else. The viewers are going to DLive and Twitch. The viewers are going to Odyssey and Rumble and BitChute, where they are treated with dignity and respect. The real game, the one I haven't mentioned yet, is the fast approaching showdown with China. Red states in many ways control the world's food and energy supplies, both of which China is desperate for. The third leg of strategic essentials for national success is access to the world's capital markets. And financial firms are beginning to exfiltrate to red areas. They're leaving New York. They're leaving California. They're leaving Boston. These are the three big financial centers. Guess where they're going? They're going to Atlanta. Yeah, they're going to Charlotte. Huge banking center. Mega huge banking center. It's eclipsing Boston. And they're going to Dallas and Houston. China is estranged from access to capital, which is the lifeblood of the Chinese Communist Party. But do you know that there's a billionaire a week, or maybe it's a billionaire a day? I think it is a billionaire a day that's being formed in China right now. But honestly, are there really billionaires in China? Is anybody really a billionaire in China? No, it's all government owned. It's all government controlled. Hopefully, the evolving United States is able to deter open conflict with an increasingly isolated CCP. I think so. I think it's quite possible that we could isolate them. I'm not exactly sure. I don't think it'll come to military conflict, at least ways not on our turf. Maybe somewhere in the South China Sea they might feel kind of froggy about it, but they're not even going to invade the Philippines or Taiwan. They don't have the ability. They don't have the ability to win a war outside their own country. And, of course, what they're doing is they're invading using cyber tools, using people. They're exporting people to these countries like Italy and Brazil and South Africa. And they're trying in India, but it isn't working too well. And if kinetic conflict does begin, likely nothing will be off the table for the CCP. And the blue states, they're still highly concentrated with their diminishing populations, which make them very vulnerable to additional biological and, well, God forbid, nuclear strikes from the CCP. They don't live in the country. They're concentrated in 3 or 4 big coastal cities. The bottom line is, go ahead. Let the blue wallow in their destructive and nihilistic French Revolution bloodbath of trying to out-virtue signal each other. They'll never be happy. They will never be satisfied. And it seems to be removing themselves from the gene pool of their own accords, if not by chopping off their own penises or removing their own vaginas, to voluntarily sterilizing one another. The rest of us, we can focus on defeating the CCP, which, by the way, their median age is climbing as well. They've systematically done away with all their breedable females. Yeah. All right, quick break with TFR. And we'll let them take a quick break, and we'll see what's going on in the chat room. By the way, I think I'm going to go to D Live right now, just because I love my people from D Live. And let's see what we can do here. How much do I have in there? Oh, we need to put some more in there. I'm going to add 100 lemons in there because I'm just feeling really generous. And when we come back from the break, I'm going to give away some lemons on D Live just to those people that have been in there and are listening. So it'll give you about 3 minutes to get yourselves over there. The chat room, excellent, wonderful donations tonight. I super appreciate it. Oh, what is that, Rob? Hopefully you're tall. Are you talking about me? Oh, I always wear, Rough Draught says, I always wear brown pants and a green shirt so I can blend in like a tree. And Rob says, hopefully you're tall. I get it. Yeah. Blue Otter says, the mini social agencies are total fundraisers. Oh, yes, absolutely. But who do they raise money for? It's all laundering to one place. It's laundering to the Marxists, because Marxists love Marxism. They just love it. I mean, they do. They can get rich and they can buy a $1 million home every 3 months if they want one, and in a neighborhood where they want to own a home. Yeah, no problem. They don't have to use their own money. They can use their donors' money. Kenneth, what is that? Brooks, what are your thoughts on the tax increases for capital gains and the rest? Should we take our money out of the market? Well, of course, my thoughts are, if you want to destroy the economy, there's no faster way than capital gains taxes. Capital gains are made by companies or individuals who are willing to take a risk putting their money in the capital markets. Now, this is the purest form of risk. Small companies and startup companies, they can't go get debt. That doesn't exist for us. We can't go sign a loan like we used to in the old days and get $25,000 and knock some walls down and go into business. Oh, it doesn't work that way anymore. Laws don't allow that. The only way for individuals to start a business anymore, let's go ahead and bring TFR back in, is with venture capital. Venture capital is risk capital, angel investors, vulture capitalists. This is where
Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio.
I've been waiting for this moment since my first breath in. Never would have thought I'd be afraid to begin, but here I am, the edge of the water, wondering if I can swim. Never seem to notice all the days pass through, but in this final moment I'm still chasing the truth. I want an explanation why I can't stay here forever in my youth. And if I press on, will you wait? Will you wait for me forever? Or would it be wrong to ask you to come with? Tell me, will you wait?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I will wait. No question about it. As long as it takes. A very patient person. All right, let's go ahead and give away some lemons now, just because I think it's a good time to do that. Let's bring this up and distribute rewards. I've hit the button. So now we're going to wait about 25 seconds and we'll find out who our lucky recipients of the generous lemon tree in DLive.tv. This is one of my favorite parts about the program because I get to return to those people that are on DLive. DLive is an excellent venue for us. All right, here we go. 1 second, and there we are. So, the luckiest followers of America Free Radio: Mark Hovsepian, 30.2 lemons; Steve Y, 62, 17.8; Master Damon, or Mailer Damon, 13.1; Bruce Banner, 99, 10.6; and Vonnie Kinsey, 9.0. Thank you so much for listening tonight. So I've been talking a little bit about global cooling, but I want to cover this story on the Royal Bank of Canada because what we're seeing here with this access to capital is really having a profound effect. And if we want to encourage startups, these are people that have good ideas in their garage, and now it's time for it to go, quasi mainstream. We're going to come out of the incubator and we're going to go out of Main Street and see if we can do business, whether it's a beauty shop or a restaurant or auto shop, or even if it's not a service industry. If you actually make something and sell something, you have to have investment money to get your equipment in place. You put up some money, they put up some money, and if they hang with you for 2 or 3 years, what happens is the value of your business goes up, the value of their investment goes up, and they, after 3 years, say, you know what, I think I'm going to sell some of my shares and recoup my investment. So if they invested, let's say, $10,000 in your business or $30,000 in your business, and now they're able to take out $50,000 or $60,000 in selling those shares to someone else, I think, or in you buying them out, I think that's the way to go. Now, what happens is government steps in and says, whoa, wait a minute. You put $10,000 in, you took $40,000 out. That's a $30,000 profit. I want half of that money. Where's the incentive? There isn't any incentive. You just took all the incentive away from the capitalist. The guy, the investor that put his money in your business to allow you to buy your sewing machines or your grill or your pizza oven, he gets ripped off by the government. They didn't do damn thing for that. They did nothing. They didn't help in any way whatsoever, and yet they're taking half the guy's profits. What's that guy going to say? I'm not doing that again. I put my money at risk for 3 years and I got to take 15 grand out. Are you kidding me? See? That's what happens when capital gains taxes go up. You stifle investment. You kill it off. And, of course, it directly, most directly, absolutely targets middle class. That's what it's there for. That's what it's there for. So, in my mind, what I would do is, even if I had to take targeted industries or targeted price ranges, if I said to the community, okay, if you put in anything up to, say, $5 million, that's a lot of money. Oh, anybody that tells you $5 million is a lot of money, run as fast as you can away from them. It's a lot of money. Somebody writes a check for $5 million, they really, really, really believe in you. But I would say investments up to $5 million it would be no tax or very little tax on capital gains as long as they leave the money in for at least 3 years. I'd like to see 5 years, but realistically it's probably 3 years. So they put their money in for 3 years and it has to stay in there or they're going to get taxed. And then it's tax-free. What's that going to do? It's going to take all those investors and they're going to want to take that risk. Government doesn't have to invest anything, nothing. They're not losing any tax money because there was no tax money there to begin with. It didn't exist. Government should stay out of it and let the investors make the money that they want to make. And that's how these startups and expansions happen. That's where the investment money comes from. I'm fine, Brad. Do I not look fine? He says, how are you? Or did you just pop in? Just saying, hey, how you doing? I'm okay. I'm fine. What is that, Stoker? No tax when static. The dynamic part is subject to change by you. Well, yeah. I mean, let's suppose that a battery company comes to an electric vehicle maker. And the battery company's making money because they're selling batteries and they've been in business for a while. And they say, look, we'll invest $5 million in your electric truck company because your electric trucks are probably going to use our batteries. In fact, we would kind of insist on it. If we invest in you, you use our batteries. Well, what happens is you go into production and you start making trucks and you start buying those batteries. So they increase their market for their batteries by investing in your truck company. They killed two birds with one stone. They invested in their own business. You understand what I'm saying? When you invest in your customers, you invest in your own business. Very smart. It's a smart way to go. That way, when your suppliers do well, you do well. And one day, who knows, maybe you could buy your suppliers out if they're the kind of source that you think they are. Let's see. Late Night Leroy on D-Live says, since government authorities printing of money, they should print their own operating costs and stop all taxes. Yeah, normally that would be true, except our government, has not printed its own money in a long time. It's been printed by the Federal Reserve. We just borrow it at 0% interest. There's a delineation there, I can tell you, because eventually what happens is the Fed, which is the company that printed the money, the private corporation that printed the money, they end up buying back the debt anyway. So how does that make sense? They loan money that doesn't exist, and then they buy back the debt, and the government pays interest on that debt. That's what I'm saying. They didn't loan anything, and they're still getting income. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's exactly what's happening. Actually, the U.S. Treasury should go back in the business of minting its own money, just like it says in the Constitution. We should not be farming that out to the Federal Reserve. And I am a big proponent, by the way, Late Night Leroy, of eliminating the 16th Amendment altogether. No more income tax. No more taxes on wages and income. No, not constitutional. Government has no right to know how much you earn. Government has no right to know how much interest money you earn, how many lawns you mowed, how much sex you had, and you don't have to sign away your Fifth Amendment rights by signing that 1040 at the end of each year. Nope. So then the next question out of your mouth is, but how does government run itself? Well, it's very simple. You put a flat tax on sales. 10% across the board. Every single item that's sold pays a 10% tax. And if you're poor, that is to say you make less than a certain amount of money. I said if you make less than $50,000, my roommate says it should be less than $200,000, but less than whatever, then you have a tax exempt card or a tax discount card. Because poor people spend less, they pay way less taxes. Rich people, they spend a whole lot more on everything. Cars, booze, golf shoes, golf games. And so they pay the tax. And, by the way, if you have a flat sales tax, you pick up two more groups of people that we don't tax right now at all. Illegal aliens. Oh, yeah. They work for cash. They mow lawns, paint houses, do nails, and cut hair. And they pay zero taxes because they get paid in cash. Everything. Wash dishes, flip hamburgers, lay brick, you name it. They get paid cash. They pay no taxes. Nobody knows how much they earn because they're among the bankless. They don't record any of their income. But guess what? They do make money. They buy cars, and they buy plaid shirts and steel-toed boots and saws and lawn mowers. Yeah, and when they do, they would pay the tax. You'd get all the illegal aliens to start paying tax. How about that? And the last group, which we also don't tax at all, are all the millions of tourists in our country. People here on student visas, people on just visiting, with money from Hong Kong or money from Rome or money from England. They come here, they exchange their money at the Detroit airport or the Atlanta airport, and they spend like crazy in our country, but they don't pay any tax, no federal tax. Well, they would pay. All the tourists, all the illegals, every single person that earns money and spends money would pay taxes. You can earn all you want, make all you want. I don't care. No one has the right to know how much interest money you earn, how many hours a week you work. None of that. It's your private business. But when you spend the money, you'll pay the tax. It's a brilliant idea, and I believe it will eventually be part of the Convention of States. That's right, A. Carpenter. Dump the 16th value-added tax. And they'll get a windfall. Two ways. One, they get tons more revenue than they're getting right now. And two, they cut the overhead. You don't need 125,000 IRS people now. Of course, you could use the IRS and reassign them and go after the agencies, departments, bureaus, and administrations to look for waste, fraud, and abuse. They're eminently qualified for that now, aren't they? And then when that job is done, you could begin paring down the IRS because you don't need them anymore. Nobody's filing the paperwork. You don't have to take anybody to court, put anybody in jail, take anybody's house or their wages or their car or their bass boat from them because you don't have authority anymore. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Royal Bank of Canada. Saturday, something that looked like a bank holiday occurred. You go to Royal Bank of Canada, RBC. It's one of the top 25 banks. And you get this on their website. Temporary issues when accessing some RBC online services. Well, I did it. I went there. And I got a white page with this. Due to technical issues, you may experience some problems when accessing RBC online and mobile banking and direct investing. We are working to fix the issue as soon as possible. We apologize for any inconvenience and thank you for your patience. Really? But I have money in the bank and I want to access the money and I can't. And by the way, it wasn't just Saturday and it wasn't just today. It started on Wednesday. And there was another bank involved as well. The Royal Bank of Canada is working to fix its online banking and web brokerage platforms after users complained of sporadic service. Yeah, how about no service, Bubba? Some clients are experiencing delays when attempting to log on to our online banking and RBC direct investing platforms due to heavy trading volumes. We regret any inconvenience this may cause clients and appreciate their patience as we diligently work to solve them. The company's verified customer support Twitter account, by the way, has been responding to customer complaints since early Wednesday morning. Twitter users have complained about trouble using the wallet application, logging into online banking and accessing RBC direct investing. Well, there's more to it because there's another bank called TD. You know, the blue, the green square with the big capital letters TD in it. Yeah. Let's see here. This person estimates they lost out on about $400 to $600 in potential gains. TD's web broker website experienced a system issue that affected some clients' ability to log into or use the site. A spokesman for TD said the bank planned to make capacity upgrades to web broker Tuesday night to help solve intermittent delays some clients experienced. Is it hacking? No, don't think so. Cyber terrorism? No. Nope, don't think that's it either. I think the banks don't want people taking their money out of the bank. Yeah, I agree, Baba Susie, and she's up there in the Pacific Northwest. This is what we predicted. We predicted that you would begin seeing 1, 2, 5-day bank holidays, big banks. Regional banks we predicted a long time ago, but now we're talking about the top 25. You get to the top 20 or the top 5, you get to Fifth Third, Wells Fargo, Morgan Stanley, Citigroup, you start seeing trouble in these banks. And no, actually, that's not true. Anna Inza 11 says, I thought RBC went belly up this past Friday, shut their doors, and then started taking their customers' account balances. That is not confirmed. I haven't seen anything that confirms that. They started having online troubles Wednesday. Thursday was still glitching. Friday it went out. Saturday it's out. And as far as I know, today it's still out. But as far as I know, it's just their online services. Banks normally do close on Friday for in-bank services, so that's normal. But come Monday, at 8 o'clock, you should be able to walk into an RBC bank. If you can't, if you're up there in NODAC country, up there above the border, and you can't go to an RBC, I want you to drop me a line. If 9 o'clock Monday morning rolls around and those bank doors aren't open, there isn't some thug with a mask in the parking lot making appointments for people to go inside the bank and do business. If there isn't a line outside the anytime teller or the, what do you call it? The teller, the outdoor teller where you can get service with the little air canister in your car, I want you to drop me a note. Baba Susie says, I got a message from the TD saying I needed to make a payment on my Visa, but ignored it because I had already paid. Good for you. You should do that. If you've already paid, you should ignore it. It takes, sometimes I've had Ally Bank. I used to make my truck payments before I paid my truck off through Ally Bank, and sometimes I would initiate the payment from my bank. And I got notice like 10 days later, hey, we haven't seen the payment yet. And that's just because Wells Fargo sends a check. Like, what is a check? I don't even, why do we have a check around? Yeah, they send a check through the mail. You know, like that thing that with an envelope. I think I have one of those around here too. That's kind of so 1990s. But yeah, and then Ally Bank gets it, and then they open the letter, and they go, oh, what's this? Oh, it's a check. And then they deposit it. So it takes 10 to 15 days, and what we were doing is not sending the payments early enough, so they were being late like 2 or 3 days. And if there's anything that doesn't describe me, it's being late. I'm ultra punctual. So I went ahead and paid the loan off. And, of course, that dropped my credit score by 20 points instantly, just like that. All right, let's talk a little bit about Moonshine. Moonshine. Not what you think, though. I got a little bit different spin on this, to tell you the truth. What if we found a clean, abundant resource that could provide the lion's share of the world's energy needs? How far would we be willing to go to get it? Well, Gerald Kulsinski, a nuclear engineer and director of the Fusion Technology Institute at the University of Wisconsin, apparently has read my book, Asteroid Mining, The Future of Energy. He's been researching the possibility of mining the moon's helium-3. He is, along with Apollo 17 astronaut Harold Harrison Schmitt, one of the concept's most prominent advocates. Schmitt wrote an article for Popular Mechanics way back in 2004 that describes a harvesting operation built on the moon to supply reactors on Earth. The lunar surface Kulsinski says, should indeed be loaded with the isotope, which is in the solar wind, the stream of charged particles from the sun. It is scarce on Earth because the planet's atmosphere and magnetic field largely deflect the brunt of the solar wind. But the moon, not so protected. It is collected in frozen pools, mostly in the South Pole region, which we call Schrodinger's Basin. It's been collecting there for billions of years. The moon is the only body that's close to the sun that has neither an atmosphere nor a magnetic field. Between the Indian lunar mission called Chandrayaan in 2008 and NASA's L-Cross mission in 2009, we confirmed a 10,000-year supply of helium-3 compared to the puny amounts available on Earth. Kulsinski estimates that there are more than 1 million metric tons of helium-3 embedded in the outermost layer of the moon's crust. And what's more, it could prove very valuable as a nuclear fuel, because just 40 metric tons would power the U.S. for an entire year if the fusion process can be perfected. Now, perhaps more important, the isotope itself isn't radioactive, and the products of its fusion would be much cleaner than the nuclear waste generated by today's fission plants. But the holy grail of such clean energy research, fusing helium-3 atoms together to make ordinary helium-4 and energetic protons, it is not easy. If you read the book, you'd know this. Nature being as it is, it made that reaction very difficult. Wisconsin campus has a small-scale reactor that consumes helium-3, but Kulsinski notes it's a long way from breaking even on the energetic balance sheet. It means it uses more than it gives back. Why is that? Because we haven't achieved the activation energy yet. On top of that, he said, estimates of the moon's reserves of the isotope are purely hypothetical. The lunar helium-3 story is, to my mind, moonshine. However, all estimates and attempts have been made here on Earth with gravity and air to deal with. And I think that's where they're missing the boat. A small reactor in microgravity and in a near vacuum of space would not require the resources to build a containment for the high activation energy. Once the fusion begins, it will provide enough energy to perpetuate the reaction as long as the compression and fuel supply are maintained. Just saying, it's easier to control a plasma in the vacuum of space without having to deal with Earth's gravity. All right, let's see. We've got about a minute left in this segment, and then we have 1 more hour to go. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a little bit from Birth, Volume 3, because you guys have been asking for me to read more from the books. And I was going to read chapter 34, but that is... yeah, okay. All right, we'll take a quick break here in about a minute with Truth Frequency listeners out there, and then we will charge into a book. Oh, yeah, here we go. How about chapter 36? Is that the one I want to read? I'll decide. I know what I'm looking for, but we'll just wait for the music. It'll break here in just a second. What's your favorite chapter out there of Volume 3? You know, Volume 3 is the only book I've seen on Amazon that has all 5-star reviews. Every single person that's read Volume 3 of the Birth Trilogy. All right, we'll let TFR take a break. I think I know where I want to go. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I just like Sunday nights so much. I'd love for you to spend time out here with me in this undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. There we go. That's where I want to be. All right, so there's deep spiritual concepts in Volume 3. And I have to tell you, it took a piece of my soul to write this book. As Volume 2 came out of me, it's sort of like, Empire Strikes Back, kind of dark, but then you come back from it. And then it's like Return of the Jedi, Volume 3. Okay, we're gonna learn and hear great, wonderful things. And it's true. I asked people, what is their favorite character in the book? And some people say, well, they just really like Boris, or they like, Richard Daring, or they like Katie, or I have a lot of people that like Bet. Bet is this larger-than-life, very strong female personality in the book. And people catch on to her right away in the very first volume. She's throughout the book. I cast her, by the way, this really great-looking Greek woman, read for the part when we were doing our screenplay examinations, and she did a wonderful job. She did a really fantastic job. I was thinking if we ever filmed, that's exactly who we would pick. But, she got a bigger role and went on to do other things, and we can't blame her for that. No actress is going to sit around waiting for us. And all we're really looking for, and if you know anyone out there, I don't care where it is, there are hundreds of you out there right now, and thousands of you will listen to this over the next week. We want to make the Birth Trilogy into a TV series. I know I was thinking like 3 big screen movies. Oh, it would be great for that, but first of all, we don't have $5 million to get started, and we don't have the time that it takes to do a big screen movie. So we're going to go after the small screen. I know Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and they're all looking for great content, and you're already out there. Tens of thousands of you already read the book, and we have fans everywhere, and we're going to read a little bit here. Let's go ahead and bring us back in. Hour number 3. We're starting right now.
America is listening to Fox News.
Wherever you are, make it TFR. Truth Frequency Radio. And
Brandy Lou, I don't know who David Hevner is. If he has a TV network out there, I need to be put in touch with them. We're ready. I mean, I have most of the scripts are written. I have a lot of the characters have already been picked. Of course, they could cast whoever they want, but we have good ideas. And I just want to see it because of these great spiritual concepts. Now, it's also a lot of high action. In this chapter of the book, what we've seen is a war open up. And what's happening is General Morley, who is sort of like the human general of the forces that are trying to destroy the other world, destroy the world that's escaping with all of the saints, shall we call them, the people who have that higher vibrational frequency going with them. He wants to eliminate all them. And he has committed this war, but obviously he can't fly to the other world and go to war with them. And he can't get the aliens to go do the attack either, because it's a violation of the rules. So what he can do is he can sort of rent the ships. And so what happens is the aliens come to Denver with their big, huge carrier, and they take on Air Force pilots. And the Air Force pilots are then trained how to fly the alien craft. And then the alien carrier takes them to the other Earth, which is already separated from this Earth, and they go in high orbit above it and begin to launch bombing runs to try to destroy all the people that have escaped on the New World. It's sort of skirting the rules, the cosmic rules. And at this point in the book, you're about 2 chapters away from the end of the book. So this is like the final battle, the ultimate battle. So the way I write, I have all these subplots that are going on because there are 16 main characters and 10 support characters. And so you have these different subplots that are going on in their own little corners of the planet. And then sometimes they cross paths and sometimes they come together for a little while and then they go apart. But this is where everything comes together. So there are a lot of parts in this chapter. And I just want to let you sit back and listen, and you'll get a flavor for how this war goes and what is going to happen in Volume 3. So we're in this chapter. General Morley is in Looking Glass. That's the Air Force's command center that's airborne. And he's giving orders to a colonel who is running the battle. And they're having a setback or two, which is kind of unique. So here we go. Yeah, Lieutenant Dan says, "Hello, birthers. I'm just in time." All right, here we go. Chapter 40. "Let me know when it's done," said General Morley. "No, sir. No, sir. That is not acceptable. You stand here with us and watch us carry out your orders, sir," said the colonel, staring Wes in the eyes. He paused and squared his slight frame with that of the colonel's towering over him. "If God did not want them shorn, he would not have made them sheep," said Wes. "My men are about to kill a significant portion of a world by your command. You will see it through," said the colonel, his voice carefully measured, not to be lost in the din of Looking Glass. "Very well, Colonel. If you cannot face it alone, I will stay with you," said Wes condescendingly. "Mr. Lewis, tell me we have some ships left," said the colonel, turning his head and raising his voice. "Yes, Colonel. There are about 400 ships forming 5 wide, and accelerating for the planet below," said Lewis. "Calm. What is the ETA to deployment?" yelled the colonel over the aisle, so the young airman in the swivel seat by the communications to the Sorry. To the young airman in the swivel seat by the communication station. Sir, the flight commander estimates less than 1 hour to deployment, said the airman. 1 hour? I thought they would take 2 hours at least to reach the upper atmosphere. They're 12,000 miles out. Why the change in flight plans? Asked the colonel. Sir, there's an escalating interference, and the aurora is expanding. The hosts want their ships back intact, Colonel. According to the modified flight plan that they just filed, they plan to deploy ordnance at 8,000 miles and let gravity do the rest, said the airman. I hope they've done their calculations correctly, said Wes. We get one shot at this, airman. Mr. Lewis, I want those missiles tracked to their targets, said the colonel. Yes, sir, said Lewis, barely making a sound as he rolled the trackball with his right thumb. Colonel, I think you need to come to the flight deck and take a look at this, said the tall captain in a black jumpsuit. The colonel looked at him like he was being called away from a close football game in the last 2 minutes. He focused his attention for a moment and lowered his intensity from the battle at hand. What is it, Captain? He asked. Sir, we're approaching a storm, and we can't fly over it, said the captain. The hell are you saying, Captain? What's our altitude? Asked the colonel, chewing the words out of his mouth. 55,000 feet, sir. It's the ceiling of this aircraft, sir, said the captain. Go around it, said the colonel. Not possible, Colonel. If you could spare a moment. I've never seen anything like this, sir, said the captain, holding his hands at parade rest. If you'll pardon me for a minute, General, we are, after all, flying 10 miles high, said the colonel. West did not look at him, keeping his eyes focused on some place far outside the airplane. Show me what you have, Captain. And the two men walked swiftly, single file, toward the front of the aircraft. This is what I want you to see, Colonel, said the captain, opening the door to the cockpit. Son of a bitch. What the hell is that? Asked the colonel, looking out the clear forward windows of looking glass. Unsure, Colonel. By our estimates, that cloud formation goes up well over 100,000 feet, said the captain. Pretty close to 150, said the flight engineer, belted into his seat. Is that cat way up there? Asked the colonel. Sort of, Colonel. Clear air turbulence only exists in simulators. There's a very weird component I cannot explain. Just before we shook through a pressure zone, the compass shows a fluctuation, said the engineer. What do you make of that? Asked the colonel, trying to get enough information to settle his flight crew down. Unsure, Colonel, said the captain. Unsure? Are you shitting me, Captain? There's better than 40 years of flight experience in this cockpit, most of it deployed. I'm asking you for your judgment, Captain, spat the colonel. It could be a warping of the Earth's flux lines, a polar modulation, said the captain. You mean something is screwing with Earth's magnetic field? Asked the colonel. Actually, Colonel, it acts more like the magnetosphere is being hacked, said the flight engineer. Hell, you say? Inquired the colonel, putting his hands behind his back in anticipation of more information. We're using HARP to backlight the battle zone, right? Well, there's something being laced into that HARP signal, like a modulating frequency. And I have to tell you, Colonel, the way this energy is stacking up, we could be in for one hell of a whiplash here, said the flight engineer. What frequency? Can we jam it or compensate somehow? Asked the colonel. My spectrometer here says it's a dirty 936 hertz, Colonel, said the flight engineer. Constant wave? Asked the colonel. The carrier is, but there's another component with it. Lower band, said the flight engineer. Can you isolate that? Asked the captain. No problem, said the flight engineer. Do it. Put it on speaker. On second thought, give me those huge headphones. You understand? Asked the colonel. Yes, sir. said the flight engineer, moving the cursor around the screen and clicking on the virtual connections to bring the signal out through the headphones now clamped over the colonel's ears. The colonel brought each of his hands up to the headphones and turned to look out the aircraft's windshield. The enormous green and orange clouds ahead of them loomed like rainbow mountains woven with energy ribbons. The plane shuddered through the occasional turbulence, and he knew it could be felt in the rear of the plane even more. His eyes were steady, unblinking, and his lips came together in a thin line of concentration. "How long has this been broadcasting?" asked the colonel as he took the headphones from his head. "About 45 minutes, Colonel," said the flight engineer. "How long has that shitstorm ahead of us been there?" asked the colonel. "About 30 minutes, said the captain. "Assume a holding pattern. A 50-mile flat turn, Captain. How much fuel do we have?" asked the colonel. "About 30,000 pounds, Colonel," said the captain. "We're heading back to Denver as soon as this bombing run is complete. And, Captain," paused the colonel. "Yes, Colonel," responded the captain. "Nobody listens to that signal. Turn it off. That is a direct order," said the colonel. "What is it?" asked the flight engineer. "No one, Captain," said the colonel, staring at him for a brief moment. He then opened the cockpit door and closed it behind him. The walk back to the battle command section of the plane seemed long and uphill all the way. "I trust the wings are still under the plane," said Wes as the colonel approached him. "They're hijacking the HARP signal," said the colonel quietly. "What did you say?" asked Wes, leaning forward. "I said they're hijacking the HARP signal. They're laying another carrier on it that seems to be creating some sort of feedback," said the colonel. "Do you trust the flight crew?" asked Wes. "They're the best in the service," said the colonel. "Damn it, Colonel. I asked, do you trust them? Can their hearts be turned? If they disappear, this plane will crash. Do you understand?" asked Wes, like he was speaking to a second lieutenant. "I know that, General. I left orders not to listen to the broadcast. I know what's going on," said the colonel. "I see you're still with us. That's a good sign. Carry on, Colonel," said Wes coldly. "Mr. Lewis, have they released any ordnance yet?" shouted the colonel over the cabin noise. "They are about to. First row of ships is about 8,000 miles out and turning to just miss the planet's buffer zone. The ships will miss the high-energy particles in the aurora, but the missiles won't. I expect to see something any moment," said Lewis loudly in return. "Colonel, calm here. The flight commander has just sent bombs away, shouted the airman from the comm station. "Colonel, am I feeling the plane turning, or is it my imagination?" asked Wes. "It's not your imagination, General," said the colonel. "I thought my orders were to remain geosynchronous as close as possible," said Wes, with his technical voice. "We're entering a 100-mile holding pattern to avoid some weather, General," said the colonel casually. "I don't recall any weather front on our flight plan," said Wes, calling his bluff. "I wouldn't have believed it myself, but it's formed up about 200 miles in front of us at more than 100,000 feet, said the colonel. "Resonance weaponry?" asked Wes. "What the hell is that?" asked the colonel. "It uses scalar wave technology as a weapon of sorts," said Wes. "I've seen sonic weapons used in Iraq and Afghanistan, but I always thought scalar weapons were a bunch of cyber hooey," said the colonel. "It is. The real deal takes time and energy to accomplish. Right now the enemy is stacking their HARP units on top of our HARP units, and then injecting another component frequency on top of that. Think of it like Joshua using trumpets to shake the walls of Jericho to the ground, only with 4 billion watts behind it," said Wes, slamming his fist into his other palm. "Well, whatever it is, we're about to fly into it. So we're in a holding pattern. It's my call, said the colonel. We better wrap this up quickly. Going to rotate out of the battle zone in an hour. So, if we turn, said Wes. Mr. Lewis, talk to me, said the colonel as he raised his voice while unable to break the dark gaze of General Wes Morley. Sir, the first missiles are entering the upper atmosphere now. I don't know what they're made of, but at Mach 11, it won't take long to either melt down or reach their targets, said Lewis. How many missiles? Asked the colonel, now moving away from where Wes was standing at the head of the aisle and toward the screens swirling with images of energy. Well, I've tried to tag them as hotspots here, but they overlap and interfere with one another. It looks to be about 600 missiles. It's the whole arsenal in one pass, Colonel, said Lewis coldly. What's this area here? Said the colonel, pointing to a sizzling white area above the planet on the screen. The best I could tell, it's some kind of filter. Well, I mean it acts like a filter. You could see above it, there, is the green color of the aurora energy, which is a little like the upper atmosphere's reaction to cosmic radiation. But below this white filter line, the energy is orange with these blue swirls in it. And I'm not sure what that is, but the shorter wavelengths look like they're being screened out, said Lewis. When did the fireworks start? Asked the colonel, trying to speak less to Lewis. Or speak only to Lewis. About 1 minute, sir, said Lewis, rubbing his right wrist from working the trackball so much in the past few hours. Calm. Any status updates from the flight commander? Shouted the colonel. Calm, he shouted again. He walked around the high screen in front of Lewis and up the other aisle to the swivel stool in front of the communications station. Why has no one relieved this airman? Where is he? Shouted the colonel. No one spoke. No one looked up. Damn it. No one saw this man leave his station? Check the bathrooms, shouted the colonel. He's not there, Colonel, said Wes, walking up behind him. He's gone. XO, I need a communications specialist now, barked the colonel, staring into Wes's blank face. Little change of scene here. I know I'm not dead. I can still smell cinnamon, said Katie. No, you're not dead. It's just power outage, said the chef. I'm afraid it's a little more than that, said Riker. I didn't hear anything, said Dick. I kind of figured this would happen, said Kyle. When were you going to tell us? Asked Donna, squeezing Kyle's hand in the darkness. Aren't there emergency generators or something? Batteries? Asked Lorraine. Ah, found it, said the chef. There was a scratching sound and a small sizzle as he struck a wooden match to life. Kyle, be a good boy and slide me that little package of birthday candles up there on that shelf. Within seconds there was a yellow candle pushing back the darkness of the room. The small group lowered their hands and arms from their connection, and Riker sat down on one of the chairs. The attack has only started, he almost whispered. There are some larger candles in the pantry. I have 99 of these left, said the chef as he was straightening a deck of chairs on the Titanic. We'll go. Come on, Katie, said Dick, reaching for her hand. You're kidding, right? If that candle goes out, there may be zombies out there. You want my water to break or something? Rattled Katie as fast as she could talk. You're not due for like 4 months. Come on. I'll keep an eye on you, said Dick. Oh, that's reassuring, said Katie. We'll go with you, said Rhino, holding his hand out for Lisa to put hers in his. She did not hesitate. There. You see? A one-eyed quarterback and a running back, said Dick, putting one arm around Katie and lighting another birthday candle off the one in Chef Bailey's hand. He handed it to Lisa and lit another one for him to hold. I guess that makes me the tailback, said Katie, trying to smile. We shall return, my friends, said Dick. Maybe I should stay and check on the apple thingies, said Katie. Let's go, Mrs. Daring, said Dick. Change of scene. The four of them started through the well-equipped kitchen, past the vertical ovens and large mixing stations. They walked past 6 large walk-in coolers and turned right into the small warehouse-sized pantry with 12-foot ceilings. Row after row of racks and glass cases and shelves that held all the supplies necessary to feed 3,000 people for 3 years danced in the shadows of the 2 little candles. We'll go down this aisle. I'm looking for candles, right? Asked Rhino. I'm thinking that government candles will be labeled candles, said Dick. Feels like a post-apocalyptic Walmart, said Lisa. No way. I could find candles at Walmart in the dark, said Dick. Well, let's not find out. Remember, those candles have to light the way back if we don't find them soon. This birthday's going to be over in about 3 minutes, said Katie, loudly enough to be heard by Rhino and Lisa in the next aisle. She's right. I think you're the man, Dick. Housewares. I think I see some brooms and buckets down there. I can see that far. Don't let that candle go out. I got this, said Rhino, jogging down to the last shadow about 200 feet ahead of Lisa. Well, at least they're not in alphabetical order, said Dick. What? You know, broom, candle, that's alphabetical, said Katie, hugging up to Dick. Ah, first down. Come on, Lisa, huddle up. I need to light one of these babies, said Rhino, ripping the case of utility candles open. Lisa shuffled as quickly as she could with her hand, shielding the last of the birthday candle from going out. Hold it sideways and I'll light it, she said. Come on, light. Oh, yeah, there we go. I love you, said Rhino. I never heard anything that sounds as good as you saying that, said Lisa, kissing him softly on the lips. Hey, you guys, over here. I found the candles, said Rhino with his booming voice while keeping Lisa's blue eyes in his gaze. We're right here, dude, said Dick. The first vibration wasn't audible. The floor and the walls seemed to exhale at first, like a bass drum hitting hard through a subwoofer in a car outside. Its sustain quietly rattled the steel racks that filled the small warehouse. The last half of Dick's candle fell to the floor and went out. Katie buried her head into his chest and began to hold her breath. Lisa put her arms around Rhino's enormous shoulders as he sat on the floor with the 3-inch candle sitting on the floor in the center between them. The fine dust, shaken loose from the cavernous room, began to float through its sphere of light. Katie peeked through her hair at the candle they were each staring at. Like thunder, announcing the distance of a storm swirling toward them with predictable fury, the next thudding sound was more intense. The sharp crescendo made Katie jerk in Dick's embrace. We have to get back to the others. Grab that case of candles. Let's go, said Dick, like he'd just woke up. Rhino put the case of candles under one arm and wrapped his other arm around Lisa as he stood. She held her hand in front of the more stable flame, and they moved together in its brighter light back to the kitchen. The next concussion was close and much more powerful. That was close, said Rhino. What was that? Asked Rhino. What do you mean, what was that? They're bombing the piss out of this place up there, said Dick. No, that, said Katie, pointing to the glow in the room that seemed to intensify with each explosion. She's right. I thought it was my eyes getting used to the darkness. I can almost see down there to the kitchen, said Lisa. Go, 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 said Dick, unwrapping his arms from her so they could move faster. The four of them broke into a run as they got close to the kitchen. The glow was coming from around the corner, and yet the fluorescent lights above them were also shimmering and dancing with sparkles of light. The sound was getting louder as they got closer and closer to the corner where the kitchen turned to the left back toward the ovens. Suddenly the ground slapped the bottoms of their feet hard enough it knocked them to the floor. The wind pushed out of their chests, and the case of candles went sliding across the polished concrete floor. Send TFR to their break, and we'll continue. Across the polished concrete floor, on a light coating of slick dust. Lisa put her hands on in front of her to break her fall, and the candle went out as it rolled away from her. "Oh, God, the candle went out," said Katie, crying. "I can still see. I can see, baby. Hang on. I'll get it," said Dick as he crawled quickly across the floor to grab the candle. "Dick, no. Please don't leave me here," screamed Katie, reaching for him. "I got it. I'm coming, baby," said Dick, sliding across the concrete toward her. She fell on him and struggled to hold him as the floor shook back and forth under them. "Don't let me go. I'm scared, but I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid," said Katie, barely breathing. "Grab my hands," said Rhino, driving his legs against the floor and forcing himself to stand. He slung Lisa around to his back like a child riding piggyback, and Dick grabbed his hand and stood up beside him, with Katie's arms wrapped around his waist. "Hang on," he said, plowing his mighty legs forward like he was dragging them through the defensive line toward the goal. They turned the corner as the round lights along the walls glowed again and again with the sound of sonic footsteps coming closer and closer. First one shelf and then another fell to the ground in front of them. Cans and boxes hit the floor like buildings falling around them. The sounds of breaking glass and ceramic mixed with the subsonic drum beat all around them. On and on they pushed, stepping around the chaotic floor and carving a path between the tables and racks that rushed in from the sides like defensive tackles. As though the destroying angel was standing on the mountain above them, slamming his hammer against the ground like an enraged demon, the thunder continued. The energy surged through the granite again and again as they plunged themselves through it like they were climbing stairs up a waterfall. Just as the burning became unbearable in Rhino's legs, they came around the last vertical oven and saw the group lying on the floor in front of them. "Glad you decided to join the party," said Kyle, trying to keep things light as he and Donna huddled under one of the steel tables. "That's not a bad idea, bro. We brought some candles," said Dick, sliding Katie under the table and then joining them. "Hold on, everyone. Just hold on," said Riker loudly. Hadid was on one side of him and Lorraine was on the other. "Professor, are you all right?" asked Rhino. "Yes, I'm okay. I'm over here with Bet and Agent Smith and Jones," said Loretta. "Dude, it's working, isn't it?" said Rhino. "You had doubts?" said Kyle. "What's working?" asked Dick. "Oh, that's just great. We're about to die, and you guys are building something," said Katie. "You haven't been paying attention, my dear," said Kyle. "Well, excuse me for pissing my sweatpants," shouted Katie back at him through her tears. "You hacked their energy, didn't you?" Bring TFR back in. "You hacked their energy, didn't you?" asked Dick. "You know what I always say, never let good plasma explosions go to waste," said Kyle. "You hacked their... You know... Wait. What the hell is he talking about?" shouted Riker over the rumbling sounds. "Igneous granite, Mr. President," said Rhino. "Don't tell me. My brain can't take it right now, said Riker, putting his head back under his arms. Even a demon's arms get tired after a while. The lights were more steady now. A pale yellow glow was coming from them as the deafening hammer blows started to fade. One after the other, the subsonic impacts walked away from them. The concrete floor rumbled again and again, but it was clear the worst had passed. Gray dust covered the floors and the tables and was still settling in the air around them. Lorraine had her arm around the president's shoulders and had her body pressed close along his side as the rumbling seemed like it took an hour for the explosions to get far enough away for her to breathe. She felt like a Londoner huddled in a bomb shelter as Nazi Luftwaffe bombers blasted away at the city above them, toppling building after building into the dark streets. She knew the planes would pass, but any of those explosions could land in the hallway and kill them all. The stress overloaded the mind until it was impossible to feel anymore. The fear could die and take the ability to love with it if you weren't careful. Any affection would be untrue, like burning your taste buds with black tea and wishing you could enjoy the sugar in the cake. "Are you all right?" said Riker, turning his face into her thick curls and smelling her deeply. "They might as well have bombed my soul," she said quietly. "We have to save them, you know," he whispered to her. "You save them. I'm spent, I'm afraid. She's coming back, you know," she whispered back. "I know. She's gonna love you, just like I do," he softly whispered. "Is everyone okay?" asked the chef. "It depends on what you mean by okay," said Katie, muffled through Dick's long sleeve she held up to her nose and mouth. "For what it's worth, I'm sure the apple turnovers are ready," said the chef. "And now you're talking," said Dick, rolling out from underneath the table. "Hold on, Mr. Daring. They're still bombing out there," said Katie, grabbing for his pant legs from under the table. "He's right. They have passed, and we're hungry. Let's wipe these tables down and eat these things by candlelight," said Rhino. "There are clean towels in the cabinet over there," said the chef, getting to his feet. "And where the hell is this light coming from?" asked Katie. "From the mountain," said Kyle. "The mountain is a battery?" asked Katie. "Well, sort of. Granite is a crystal of sorts. It is quartz, and the plasma bombs charge it up in a few minutes just like the sun does, but much faster and more intense. They don't know it, but every mountain in this range is now energized for a long time thanks to their plasma weapons," said Rhino. "And you guys knew this was coming?" asked Katie. "It was the president's idea," said Kyle. "No, it was your idea. I just approved the resources," said Riker, getting to his feet and helping Lorraine to stand as well. Hadid dusted off his suit and helped Smith and Loretta to their feet. "Where's Jones?" "He's gone down to assess the damages. He'll be back to report soon," said Smith. "We'll have a turnover for him," said the chef. The chef took the golden brown turnovers out of the oven one by one from the floor of the oven where they had fallen and placed them on a wiped clean platter. They picked a chair up and placed a candle in the middle of both tables. Donna brewed the coffee again. Kyle washed the dust out of enough mugs for them to drink from. Hadid and Smith stood in the doorway while the small group quietly sat and listened to the sounds of water and ceramic. "Okay, coffee's ready," said Donna. "Yep. Now, where were we when we were so rudely interrupted?" said Kyle. "That was rude, wasn't it?" said Dick caustically. "Pass the turnovers, please," said Rhino, scooting his chair up to the table. "There's a light coming," said Hadid, reaching behind his jacket. It's Jones. Relax, said Smith. It's me. The street is filling with people. There are some injured, but no deaths reported. This place is built to take it, that's for sure, said Jones. Yeah, well, I didn't feel anything actually hit the ground. They were air bursts, best I can tell, said Smith. Strange thing, though, said Jones. What strange thing? Asked Smith. The lights are working, sort of, but it's not totally dark out there, said Jones. Kyle's gizmo. It's wired in, said Smith. We probably should be getting out of here, though, said Kyle. Are you kidding? They just nuked the bloody hell out of the world up there, said Bet, with her mouth half full of apple turnover. Not nukes, plasma, without fallout. It won't last more than a few hours, once the fires burn out. The reason we have to get moving soon is that with that little thing we built, there's not enough power to run the air filtration system. We could get poisoned down here if we don't get moving, said Kyle. Oh, great. We have a case of candles for 3,000 people and 9 miles to walk, said Bet. Check the building, Jones, and check with the other building captains to make sure everyone gets out, said Smith. I'm on it. If we get the buildings evac'd, maybe we can conserve power by shutting them down, said Jones. There's the man with the plan, said Kyle. Hey, I have a crazy question. Who says the war's over? Asked Katie. Everything we know about General Morley says he spent everything he had on us just now. He won't be back, said Riker. Who the hell is General Morley? Asked Donna. He would be the commander of those interplanetary forces out there, said Riker. Yeah, and he ain't too happy about the shit on his shiny gold fan, said Kyle, drinking the last of his coffee. What about ground forces? Asked Donna. We believe that the molecular structure of the two planets is no longer compatible. They can't land anything on this world, said Lorraine. But weapons still work? Asked Donna. Yes and no. Even if the electronics don't work here the same, the explosions from the bombs are raw energy. Can't be created or destroyed, right? But it can be converted. I got a glimpse of this back in Irwin, Tennessee. It took me a while to realize what I was looking at. I even built a converter to take the energy stored in the crystal of a mountain, but it didn't work until I got it in view of the plasma from the sun. Even then, it was very small amounts. I figured if they used the plasma bombs they used on in Detroit, I could capture it and convert it, said Kyle. You guys are done with your coffee, or are you going to hang out here till we run out of air? Asked Smith. Like we could breathe up the whole place. Walk, don't run to the nearest exit, Smith, said Bet, putting an arm around his shoulder. Besides, what do we expect to find out there anyway? Asked Katie. What do you say we take the stairs and go find out? Asked Smith. Mr. President, what do you suggest? Asked Katie. I found leadership isn't always about being right. Sometimes it's about keeping the peace. If we leave Site R, we could starve. If we stay, we could become asphyxiated. Let's gather in the street and make some assignments. I have a feeling we have a long journey ahead of us. Taking a page from someone I know, we should place ourselves in the future and then look back to this time to see what was the best course of action, said Riker. Hadid smiled, and Lorraine put her hand on his shoulder. Rhino took a look around and plucked the last apple turnover from the platter. Dick and Katie stood up and joined hands. I guess there's your answer, Smith, said Bet, bumping Agent Smith sideways with her hip. I'll close the doors, but leave them unlocked. Someone might get hungry, you know, said the chef. Rhino handed out the candles, although they weren't lit. This way. I don't have to carry the whole box. What do I look like, a pack mule, he asked. No way. A mule can't do a 4.640, said Kyle. Used to could, said Rhino. Get ready, world. Here we come, said Dick. Oh, that's the big battle, big final battle in the book. You could hear it. I think it would make great TV, don't you? I really do. I really think it would make great TV. Really? Brad M. says, I was just in Irwin, Tennessee. Yeah, well, there's a little company there that converts nuclear fuel for missiles into nuclear fuel for power stations, nuclear reactors. It's the only place in the country that does it. I almost went to work there and at the last minute decided I think I'm going to take something else. All right, so what's going on with libertarians? On the day that Virtual Joe was inaugurated as president, former CIA chief John Brennan, one of the Dirty 30 who should be in jail, announced on television that federal intelligence agencies are, and I quote, moving in laser-like fashion to try to uncover as much as they can about various suspect groups, specifically mentioning libertarians. Libertarians are in the federal crosshairs right now. 6 or 7 years ago, there was a lot of prattle about how the libertarian movement has arrived. I always knew that was a bunch of bunk. Since then, there's been a huge increase in hostility to libertarians in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere around the country. Many libertarians assume they have nothing to fear because they were not engaged in seeking to violently overthrow the government. But the feds will be able to find many other pretexts to target peaceful citizens with supposedly subversive ideas. Federal law already defines domestic terrorism far more broadly than most people realize. As the Oregonian recently noted, cases categorized as domestic terrorism include allegations of knowingly entering or remaining in any restricted government building or grounds, civil disorders and making threatening communications. FBI Chief Christopher Wray told a Senate committee that the FBI has 2,000 ongoing domestic terrorism investigations. And by the way, Mr. Wray recognizes the terrorist peril as the ticket to a bigger budget. We need more agents. We need more analysts. Virtual Joe is itching for a broad new domestic terrorism law to enable even more crackdowns. Libertarians need to recognize how that definition of terrorism has already mushroomed. Capitol Police, like the ones that assassinated Ashley Babbitt at point blank, unarmed. Acting Chief Yogananda Pittman, testifying to Congress, described the January 6th clash at the Capitol as a terrorist attack by tens of thousands of insurrectionists, close quote, and a bunch of crap. Apparently anyone who prompted from Trump's raging speech to the Capitol that day was a terrorist, or at least an insurrectionist. After the clash at the Capitol on January 6th, the de facto definition of terrorism seemed to be anything that frightens politicians, right? We will find out too late that the new de facto definition of domestic terrorists is individuals who distrust the feds and own 2 guns and more than 100 bullets. How many people out there in the chat room fit those 2 descriptions? Another code word for who the feds will target is extremists. The Washington Post in January portrayed domestic extremism as a disease that seems to have taken hold in the nation's nervous system. Really? Last fall, FBI boss Wray told Congress that among the underlying drivers for domestic violent extremism are perceptions, better listen closely, perceptions of government or law enforcement overreach. Really? You don't think running up on somebody and punching them in the face and kicking them into submission, tasing them, handcuffing them, and then dragging them off by their hair, you don't think that's overreaching? Huh. The more of the arrests that you see, well, that's obviously good news for everybody that we're arresting people who need to be arrested. How about arresting yourself, you puke? In the coming years, the feds may treat libertarians like radical Muslims were treated after 9/11. Like any new crackdown on terrorism will turn into a numbers game in which justice and fair play don't have a snowball's chance in hell. Between 2001 and 2006, federal prosecutors charged 10 times as many people in terrorism investigations as they convicted on terrorism-related charges. President Bush declared in 2005 that federal terrorism investigations have resulted in charges against more than 400 suspects, and more than half of those charged have been convicted. But the truth is, only 39 people were convicted on crimes tied to terrorism or national security. 39. Entrapment opened the floodgates to federal terrorism indictments. Trevor Aronson, author of the Terror Factory, Inside the FBI's Manufactured War on Terrorism, estimated that only about 1% of the 500 people charged, that would be 5 people, with international terrorism offenses in the decade after 9/11 were bona fide threats. 5 people. 30 times as many were induced by the FBI to behave in ways that prompted their arrest. You understand what that means? 35 times as many as that were induced by the FBI to behave in ways that prompted their arrest. Like running, or like taking money out of the bank, or like buying a one-way ticket somewhere. In 2006, the FBI fabricated a terror scheme of the Liberty City 7, where an informant encouraged a bunch of dimwits in Florida to babble about blowing up government buildings. And by the way, that group was so stupid that they asked the FBI informant for military uniforms and wanted to conduct a parade. Few Americans recognize how badly the legal playing field is tilted against them. When the FBI agents knock on their doors, many Americans won't hesitate to open up because they assume those who have nothing to hide have nothing to fear. But the FBI is exploiting a sweeping law that criminalizes just casual comments. Casual comments. You know, I didn't mean anything by that. I was just making conversation. Federal agents have the right to lie to you and to put you in prison if you lie to them. Any citizen who makes even a single word, no or yes, false utterance to a federal agent faces up to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. Oh, and it gets worse. If you don't actually lie, FBI agents can fabricate the sentences they use to hang you. Unlike most law enforcement agencies, the FBI rarely videotapes interviews, almost never. You know why? So they can fill out that form any way they want. It permits the agents to create the narrative, to invent the facts, which can then be used to charge individuals with false statements. Instead of a transcript from a videotape or a recording, an FBI agent writes up a memo a day to a week later, asserting that what he is writing is what you actually said. FBI agents have been taught that subjects of FBI investigations have forfeited their right to the truth, which helps explain the vast increase in federal entrapment operations. If the FBI shows up at your door, they might have already assessed every email and every text message you've ever sent. They may have vacuumed all your social media activity. Those private Facebook messages you sent? Yeah, right. WhatsApp, Telegram, Proton, they get it all. They may have also accessed all your credit card and other financial information. They know what you buy. They know what you watch on Netflix. They know what you surf and don't buy. And the FBI may have already interrogated other people to squeeze out accusations against you that they can throw in your face. And then they launch into a game of 20 questions with a federal indictment awaiting if they claim you answered untruthfully. What do you think you should do? What do you think you should do in that situation? I'm going to give you some advice. Don't say a word. Don't say a word. I don't care if they ask you your name. I don't care if they ask you the time of day. I don't care if they ask you where you went to school or how old you are or what color you are. You say nothing. Do not speak to them. You get an attorney. You ask for an attorney. You demand an attorney. You repeat that over and over and over again, but you do not speak to them. That's how it goes. That's my advice. And I think if you take my advice and you shut up and you sure as hell not ever cease fighting for your rights and liberties. Friends of freedom need to continue valiantly and peacefully championing their ideas, that's for sure. But at some point, more Americans will finally recognize the folly of permitting politicians and government agents to capture vast, unchecked power over everyone else. In the meantime, prudent libertarians will avoid writing anything in an email that they don't want to hear read out loud in federal court. Just saying, there's a lot of talk, a lot of gambling with that out there, and I don't think it's wise. I really don't. Remember, as humans, we know we are conscious because we experience and we feel things. And yet great thinkers are unable to explain what consciousness is, and they're equally baffled about where it comes from. It doesn't come from out there. It comes from us. We are part of the causative energy of this universe. If you really want to baffle and surprise our enemies, the Marxists, the ones that are taking away our rights, we could talk about consciousness all day long. But I want you to remember where you are and remember who you are. You're here with me on America Free Radio. You are an eternal being having a mortal experience. And I want you to go out there and look for the good in others and help it to grow a little every day. No violence, no fear, no hatred. We are here to save this world, not condemn it. There'll be others willing to do that. We're not here to accuse anybody, least of all yourself. Offer your smile, offer your love, offer your encouragement, no condemnation. Everything we do will eventually affect the universe. So just remember, this is X Squared Radio, and I am Brooks Agnew, your host, saying peace, Earth Explorers. Now go and do everything on purpose. You want to sleep in for the rest of the day, at least do it on purpose. No more accidental effects on the universe. We don't have time for that. We'll see you on Wednesday.